A warm welcome to a very rainy Spa welcomes the TCR cars, the Touring Car Endurance Series from the Creventic sponsored 24H Series for its fifth and final round of the 2017 season. We started way back in April at Silverstone in fairly similar conditions actually, and then continued on to Manicure, to Misano and to Barcelona for the 24 hours. We're here for a split race at 12 hours to end then the TCE season in its second year after this championship was born at the start of 2016. And misty, murky, a little bit of rain in the air, and that is where we see this morning. A warm welcome to Diana Binks and Joe Bradley, who are part of our coverage here on RS1. Not able to hear from either Diana or Joe at the moment, but rest assured we will be chatting to those guys very shortly. They're probably hiding for a little bit of cover from the rain at the moment. But yes, it's been an interesting start to the day with the Proto Series cars back out on track for another 5 hours after yesterday's event. And that race has just completed after 111 laps. Remember, we're doing 3 hours today for the TCE cars. That then gets the grid into position for tomorrow morning's early start. We'll be racing again at 9:10 local time through till just before 6 o'clock, which will see us complete 12 hours around this 7-kilometre, 4.3-mile circuit. We have 3 Mercedes-AMG test team cars here this weekend, and some big names actually piloting those cars, including Bernd Schneider, including Alex Torrell, and Adam Christodoulou, who is here in the number 2 car. But one of the interlopers in the GT4 element of the entry was a late, really good qualifying effort from Rick Breukers to put the Red Camel Jordan Seat Leon, the TCR spec Seat Leon, onto the front row of the grid to join, in fact, the number 84 Mercedes-AMG test team Black Falcon car. And that will be probably started by Bernd Schneider, but could well be Indy Donchi or Jörg Wiebahn, who is a late entrant to that number 84 Mercedes to make it a 3-driver lineup. Going to try and get a bit more reaction now from down below here in the main commentary box. Joe Bradley and Diana Binks with the full coverage this weekend. Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you doing? We're here. We're in the pit lane, Joe and I. We've just come downstairs before the start. Everything's getting underway. The atmosphere is really building, and of course the rain is still with us. I'm Diana Binks. I hope you enjoy our coverage today. Joe, we have got a pretty busy afternoon, haven't we?
We have, and here we are. Spa-Francorchamps. Is there a more challenging circuit in the world? We could argue that forevermore. Just the names: Eau Rouge, La Source, and Blanchimont. Scary places. And here we are. The weather, add in that, and the forecast is to be poor but consistent. We're going to have a consistently wet track, and I think that's a bit of a headache taken away out of the equation for the teams. We're going to be on wet tyres, but you know what wet weather brings? That brings uncertainty in all aspects of things. And I just hope everyone has a safe 12 hours of Spa.
Absolutely. And Joe, we've talked to a few of the drivers, haven't we? And some of these guys have really only had a couple of laps of the circuit. So obviously they'll be looking at the tyre situation, as we talked about, getting the heat into those tyres, getting the best they can. But I guess some of these drivers in this first part of the race won't actually get in the car until tomorrow. Yeah,
some of the drivers we've been speaking to today aren't going to be in the car until tomorrow. And that's a bit of a funny one, because here we are about to start the race, and it's one, again, the Creventic series, the 24H series, the TCE series, which this is the final round of. Once again, we're splitting the race. The 12 hours is going to be split. We're going to have just over about, I think, 3 hours today, 3 hours and 15, and then tomorrow we're going to finish off with 9 hours. And that brings its own challenge tactically. How do you bring in the drivers today? Are we going to do it with 1 pit stop? Are we going to do it with 2? I think because of the weather, we're going to be stifled by driver time. The regulations only allow the drivers to be in the car for a maximum of 2 hours at a time. Now, normally, we'd be stifled by fuel restrictions and also tyre usage. I don't think that's going to come into the equation today. I think this is going to be a very interesting race on the pit wall as well as on the track.
Joe, what is it about this circuit that makes it so special?
I think Spa is a very, very fast circuit. It's very challenging, not just from a driver's sense, but also an engineer's, from the engineering point, and to get the car to work. Even the slowest parts of this course are very fast. Even the La Source hairpin, which is behind us here, that's still a fast turn. And to get the car balanced through those very fast turns doesn't just take a lot of prowess behind the wheel, but a lot of engineering skill to give that driver the sort of car he can be confident in. So I'm looking forward to this as ever.
Yeah, Joe, we can sort of see behind us, and you can't see it at the minute, but in front, we're just waiting for the cars to leave the garage. But a lot of the engineers and the drivers are coming out now into the pit lane, having a look up there at the sky. I guess it's like that last-minute thing. Strategy will really have to change now that the heavens have opened again.
There'll be some engineers looking at that sky, Diana, thinking, please stay like this, please just stay wet. And there'll be other engineers whose cars don't work so well in the wet, thinking, please just blow away. Will these rain clouds just blow away? But as we found over the weekend, Spa-Francorchamps seems to have its own little microclimate. Yesterday we were down in Malmedy in beautiful sunshine. We drove back to the circuit and it was pouring with rain. What's that all about?
Well, I've had to get the hat on, so, you know,
Yes,
I've got to be here with my hat to keep us warm.
You brought the winter hat out early, haven't you?
But talking to the guys and the drivers in the different classes here, everyone is really up for this challenge. Everyone really wanted to get here to Spa, didn't they? It's one of those circuits that it never fails to impress, and it catches you out as well.
Yeah, it's one of the circuits, I think, that when the TCE series was announced back in the at the beginning of the 2017 season, I think everyone focused on the big ones, Barcelona, which was the previous round, and now Spa. I think a lot of these teams and drivers who, don't forget, not necessarily professional teams and drivers here down the grid. We've got a huge diversity of how people are going about their motor racing here. But I think Spa as one of those circuits, because of the nature of the track, the history of the track. Yes, we've been racing on this current configuration since 1983, but what they did when they changed the track and revamped it from the old, what was a road course, they've captured the essence of the challenge of Spa-Francorchamps, and that has remained since all those years back in 1983. It's still the challenge that ever was.
How would you describe driving this circuit?
Exciting. I had a word for it there, but I thought, oh, we're live on telly. I can't use that word. Exciting. Challenging, exciting, frustrating. It brings all of that. You know, there's never, whenever I've driven Spa, I don't think there's ever, every time I've crossed the line, I don't think I've ever thought that was the perfect lap. I think it's an unachievable thing here at Spa. Very, very difficult.
Now, we've got 48 cars on the grid for this one, so quite a mix with the different classes, as we know. What do you think we're likely to see?
Spa has got some, what we're not going to see is we haven't got 46 cars around a circuit like, say, Portimao, which can be tight and cramped. I think if everyone is sensible, especially considering the conditions, we've got a diverse grid again of classes, and the speed differentiation between the faster cars is much, much greater than the slower cars. But I think because of the nature of the circuit, that's maybe not going to present itself as perhaps what we've seen in the past. So I think as long as people are sensible, though, and that's the human element, so who knows?
Great. Well, we're definitely looking forward to it, aren't we? We'll be here, and with Johnny and the three of us will be covering this race for you, so we hope you enjoy it. For the moment, though, I'm going to let you, Joe, get up to the commentary box just to join Johnny, and I'll be catching up, I hope, with a few drivers just before they get in the car and get underway for that race start.
Thank you, guys. Yes, just to explain the format ahead of our first start of the weekend. The cars are actually going to grid up on the downhill section of the Spa circuit between La Source and Eau Rouge. That is the traditional gridding area for instance, the Spa 24-hour race. But the Spa 24-hour race also starts from that position. We are going to take the more traditional start where the Formula One Grand Prix, you can, in fact, if you're watching the live stream, have a perfect view there of the start and finish line between the bus stop chicane and La Source, the right-hand hairpin. So the race start will take place there. Cars will be gridded up and released onto their green flag lap from the other grid hatching area. And actually the clock will start, the 12 hours will start to tick down as the green flag is waved and the cars are released on their way down through Eau Rouge and up through Radion and onto the Kemmel Straight for the first time. We won't actually be racing for another 2 or 3 minutes, but the clock will start to tick down. Then at 5 to 6 this evening, the race will be effectively checkered flagged, and those positions will be locked in. Cars go into parc fermé conditions, so they'll all be lined up. I think they're actually being brought back into the F1 pits, but the teams will not be permitted to touch them, and then they'll be released again out onto the other section of the grid tomorrow morning, ready for a 9:10 start, a restart, where we will motor through as many as we can, as many hours as we can, hopefully getting to the 9-hour mark. But with a 9:10 restart tomorrow, and a curfew of 6 p.m, it's going to be rather tight to try and fit in all of the 12 hours. But that is the aim, and obviously the checkered flag and the 6 o'clock curfew will kind of be the absolute deadline. Both Diana and Joe mentioning that it is a multi-class race, part of the TCE series, the Touring Car Endurance Series for 2017. We have 5 classes represented here, SP3 stroke GT4, 12 of those cars, of which the 3 Mercedes AMG GT4s are part. There are 16 TCR cars here this weekend, and that promises to be a fantastic race across 12 hours. A3 represented by 8 different machines, amongst them the Synchro Motorsport Honda Civic Type R, which took pole position yesterday, and we do have Seat Leons present in Class A3 as well, along with BMW Z3s and BMW M3s. A2, 5 of those cars for Clios and a Kia Ceed being sported by Bastuk Racing, Bastuk Motorsport indeed, the Bernhard Wagner, Guido Naumann and Marahau Griebel car. So great to see another different car manufacturer represented on the 21st row of the grid. And there'll be 7 BMWs, the Cup 1 edition of the BMW M235i Racing Cup cars regularly seen as part of the VLN Championship, and also in things like the Dubai 24 hours as well. But 7 cars represented in the Cup 1 division, and the 152 Sorg Rennsport entry in Cup 1 was kind of streaked ahead of everybody else in qualifying yesterday, but then there's this big clump of Cup 1 cars further back down the grid in 27th, 28th, 29th and onward, so that promises to be a very tight battle across the 12 hours as well. Have an opportunity in a moment or two to run you through the full grid. This race, by the way, will effectively start at 2:45 local time when the green flag is waved. There is the 102 car making its way towards the end of the pit lane. That's the Homeguard Motorsport entered Seat Leon Cup racer from Denmark. Jonas Homegaard and Marcus Homegaard from the same family, joined by Norwegian driver Roy Edlund. And Wolfgang Haug makes it a great spread of nationalities. Denmark, Norway and Germany all represented in the number 102 car, and a smart livery for that machine as well. Information stating the bleeding obvious on the screen to tell us that it is a wet track, so therefore tyre choice is less restricted than it may be in the full dry. There's the NKPP car in the Piet Mondrian inspired livery with yellow, red, blue and white squares on that machine, and the NKPP car has qualified 10th in TCR. As I say, the best placed TCR car is that of Rick and Ivo Breukers, and Rick will have had a very busy weekend even before he starts the TCE series race, because he's done 2 5-hour races as part of the Proto series this weekend. Yes, he's sharing a Ginetta G57 with, I think, at least 1 and possibly 2 other drivers. But Joe, Diana and I were all out earlier on today, just prior to lunchtime, watching the cars through La Source and through Eau Rouge in dry conditions, and certainly the number 3 car looked arguably faster than anybody else during that particular stint, and I had to look to see who was in the car. It turned out to be Rick, and then I was slightly less surprised to see the car going so well. But Rick Breukers now having to recalibrate the brain from a Ginetta G57 to a Red Camel stroke Jordan.NL Seat Leon, the TCR V3 car that will start from the front row alongside one of 3 Mercedes AMG GT4 cars. The Golf number 163 is the entry from Motorsport International. That's a Golf GTI TCR car, and 3 Belgians due to be driving that for a Belgian team. Yet to be released, though, from the grid is car 163. But there seems to be a real spread of how the TCR cars have qualified, bearing in mind we've got 1 second and 144th, Joe.
Yeah, it was full wet conditions, Johnny, if you remember qualifying yesterday. I say full wet conditions. The rain just eased. It didn't stop. And subsequently, we had a very wet track or a damp track. It was never, ever, it never went anywhere towards being a little bit just moist or dry even. So we had it was basically down to when you were out lapping and at what point and what the track conditions were at the point you were out lapping. And it was kind of just being, well, yeah, down to luck, I suppose. I'm sure there were some wily old team managers on the pit wall sending their cars out when they saw the rain had eased a little, and subsequently the track wasn't as wet. And you can tell just how wet a track is by the amount of spray that the cars are putting out. And yesterday there wasn't at any point during that qualifying session where we saw any kind of spray reduce from the cars whilst they're out on track. So yeah, I think that's probably why we have such a mix of lap times, even in just the one class of cars. And let's not forget that the TCR class, understandably in a Touring Car Endurance Series, being the predominant class with 16 entries. So we are possibly going to see the biggest challenge from the TCR class. And I don't think, if you look at the grid there, we've got in the first 6 cars, we've only got 1 TCR. And I just think that was down to the conditions of qualifying yesterday. I don't think that's going to be reflected in how we see this race progress.
I'm expecting less of an overlap, certainly, between the SP3 cars and the TCR machines, although TCR, I suggested yesterday, kind of taking over the world as far as touring car racing is concerned. Certainly in the slightly smaller hatchback touring cars, I think BTCC and I think bigger machines, booted cars, more family 4-doors, I suppose, rather than the hot hatches that we see in TCR, like Seats, like Golfs, and the Audi RS3. I know that's a booted car, but it's front-wheel drive, and it's kind of like the family version of the Audi A3, effectively. But the Audi RS3, there's a couple of those, and one of them being supported by CAD Speed Racing. That car has qualified 18th position and 9th in class. The James Kay, Mark Lemmer, Peter Kate and James Cottingham car. One of the many Cup 1 BMWs just working its way towards the end of the pit lane. There are 2 Sorg Rennsport examples, and that, I think, was one of them. But also some new names on me, I have to admit. Some home teams, Belgian teams, Gams's Motorsport, the QSR Racing School are here as well, with a couple of BMW M235i, so it's going to be fascinating to see how those cars get on. The 217 Modena Motorsports Seat is another TCR entry. Great to see 3 cars from a team based in Hong Kong, and Modena Motorsports are that team, bringing a great flavour of different driving nationalities as well. Indonesia represented in the 217 car, along with Canadian driver Christian Chia. There is the Golf number 163 heading towards the end of the pit lane as well. And that's the Motorsport International Volkswagen Golf, due to start from 44th position. It is very, very busy on the grid. And this slightly unusual format, Joe, whereby the cars grid up in one position and will take the start in another. It reminds me of the European Le Mans Series meeting at Silverstone, for example, because they use the heritage pits for the ELMS cars at Silverstone. They grid up on the traditional start-finish straight, and then they come round on a part green flag lap, or sometimes 1.5 green flag laps, to take the start then in front of the wing. And that's exactly what's going to happen with these cars. They will be unleashed onto the green flag lap at exactly 1/4 to the hour. Busy down there on the grid, though, isn't it? You need to be wise to where your car is, I suppose, as you've sent it out from the F1 pits, and it's now parked in front of the endurance pit lane.
Yeah, I think it's kind of going back to the history of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit here. The grid was always the downhill section. You know, the heritage pits, as we would call them at Silverstone. They're called the are they called the historic pits here? They're
called the endurance pits.
The endurance pits.
Yeah.
And it's on the downhill run. Now the steepness of that run down the hill towards Eau Rouge can never be conveyed on camera as to the reality of it. And the teams have to be, when you're working from those pits, teams have to be very wary not to leave go of any errant wheels, because the wheel will immediately start rolling away from you.
Yep.
And that'll be, you know, I've seen that many times.
Yep.
But
and head for the Babbling Brook.
And head for the Babbling Brook, Eau Rouge. Yes, the Red River.
Yes.
Or Red Water.
Red Water, yeah, but I hadn't realised the whole stretch of the water is called Eau Rouge, so it worked its way out of the mountains, and from that point it's known as Eau Rouge, and then it goes to the sea eventually, I guess. But yes, the corner name, and it was always a traditional left and right over a bridge, effectively, with the bridge abutments not even taken away. If you look at old school footage of Grand Prix here in the 60s and even as late as 1970, it was a real left-right kink there at the base of Eau Rouge, over a bridge and then up, almost like a rally stage. So there is Steve Tandy, who has just taken part in another 5 hours of the Ginettas, G57, and Mike Simpson's there as well. But let's get another update from Diana Binks, who's down in the F1 pit lane.
Thank you. I'm with Ricky Coombs, TGM Sport. The cars have all left. It feels quite strange here, Ricky, doesn't it? There's nobody around in this end of the pits.
No, it's all quiet now. There's, well, just glad to get the race going. So, yeah, let's get on with it.
The sort of rain had started. It stopped again. But that's not really going to change much, is it? It's obviously a wet one for this one. How are you guys feeling in the team? What's the thoughts?
Cold.
Apart from being cold. You're not as cold as me, but I've got a hat.
No, it's good. It's as long as it stays wet, we're happy. So as long as it don't dry, then obviously then go wet, it stays wet, it's happy. Yeah, let's get racing. So
what's the sort of strategy for you guys today?
Don't know, because we haven't done no testing, so it's a case of the first stint will be our benchmark really, and then get back what we're using, fuel, tyre wear, and then work it out as we go along really. So.
I sort of missed the car as it left the garage. Who's starting?
Dave Drinkwater's in the car to start off with, so yeah, hopefully good start, keep out of trouble, and get a few laps under our belt. So.
Do you think you'll get all the drivers in this afternoon?
No, it'll be 2 drivers today, and the third one will start tomorrow. So yeah, that's what we're banking on. So everything goes well. So.
All right, Ricky, thanks ever so much. But as you can see down here, Johnny, obviously the cars, as we know, have gone to the other grid to line up. Everyone's left. There's really not anyone. I feel a bit lonely down here in the pit lane myself, but they'll be back pretty soon as the race gets underway.
It's not that far away, actually, Diana. Not that far away at all. We are on 37 minutes past 2, just coming up to 38 minutes past 2, and we're scheduled to green flag the cars off the grid at exactly 1:45. So the race timing will begin, and the start proper, where we're allowed to go racing out of formation, out of grid formation, will when the cars come back around and are in front of us, in front of the F1 pits, on the run down to La Source. So effectively, the race will start, the race time will start on the green flag being waved. However, we aren't racing until we start pouring down towards La Source. La Source effectively being corner 1 of the 12 hours of Spa.
Yes, unlike, for example, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where it is, you know, very cleverly coordinated, and the cars are released 7 minutes before the top of the hour so that they get back to the start line bang on the top of the hour. We're going to make it a little more simple today, although, interestingly, 3 hours and 5 minutes have appeared on the time for today, which is about right, 2:45 through till 17:50, 5:50 is the time we're due to stop, or at least the checkered flag will be readied at that point. It kind of depends where the leader is at that exact time, and we'll have to obviously complete that current lap, and we'll see the checkered flag at the end of it. Bernd Schneider, I can confirm, will start the number 84 Mercedes-AMG Test Team Black Falcon GT4 car from pole position. That's now a 3-driver lineup with Jörg Wiebahn joining Indy Donchi and Bernd relatively late on in the week. Rick Breukers will be at the wheel of the 303 Red Camel Jordans.NL Seat in the bright orange colours. So that's the slightly unconventional front row. I don't think anybody really expected that coming here this weekend. And then the second row will be 2 more Mercedes, Adam Christodoulou and Fabian Hamprecht.
Car just leaving the pits there, Kinetic Racing Seat. Now that's a car that will start at the back of the grid. I believe, from what I can see, that car's probably just taken on a full tank of fuel as it now joins the rear of the grid. That car went off in qualifying yesterday, and heavy damage to the left front corner. Just looked superficial actually on a first visual. However, as ever, when the guys start stripping things down, and required a bottom wishbone, which they've been able to borrow from somewhere. I didn't ask too many questions as to what they meant by borrow, but the car is fixed. Bottom wishbone and a little bit of superficial bodywork. New door mirror, as you'll see a complete difference with the door mirror on the right of that car to the door mirror on the left, as the one on the left has been taken off a Seat TCR, the later version of that car. So good to see Kinetic Racing getting that Seat fixed and readied and able to take the...
Sounds good, thank you.
Graham Saul, Hamad Al-Assam, Hamad Al-Mohanandi will be the drivers of that car. And another anomaly to the split races, Johnny, only 3 hours of racing today will mean that the drivers won't, all of the drivers won't get to try out the car today. But by tomorrow afternoon, everyone will have had a try.
There's a reminder of where we've been so far this year. Silverstone happened at the end of March and the start of April, the 1st and 2nd of April being the Saturday and Sunday of the 24 hours. Joe Bradley was there with John Hindhaugh and Paul Truswell. Manicourt was the next stop on the calendar a couple of weekends later. Great little track there at Manicourt, and sadly not used as readily as it might be. The Formula One circus no longer making the trip to France, although there will be a French meeting, of course, on the calendar next year at Paul Ricard. Then we went to Misano in the middle portion of July. Tight and twisty track there in Italy. Barcelona and the 24 hours happened at the start of September. And we're here at Spa-Francorchamps for the first, we think the first ever 12 hours of Spa. This place has a strong history in terms of a 24-hour and a 6-hour race. But this will be the first ever 12 hours of Spa-Francorchamps for touring cars. And it's been a nice, neat and perfectly formed calendar for 2017, the second year that TCR has been in the equation. So the 142 car has joined the back of the field, and we can get another update from Diana in the pit lane.
Yes, I was just going to see if I could get Mike Simpson, who was racing in that earlier race, just to give us a little bit of an indication to what the track conditions are like. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I'll have to nip into the garage and come back to me so I can get Mike to come out. I need to bring him out to the other side of the garage because everyone else has disappeared to the grid. So come back to me in a couple of seconds if you don't mind.
Will do, yeah, and there's a little bit of rain on the camera there indicating that it is still drizzling. You were out there not so long ago, Joe, and the other weather that I've noticed through the course of the weekend is it's been fairly blustery here as well, particularly on the main straight. The rain yesterday was coming down at a 45-degree angle. It seems like it's less windy today with less cloud movement.
It's not just wet though, Johnny, it's a low ambient temperature as well. It's 8 degrees out there, and that is certainly the front wheel drive cars, the teams who are running those cars are concerned with just how they are going to be able to get the handling of those cars balanced, because the rear tyres are just not going to come up to temperature. Now that is going to lend itself to those rear tyres not wearing very little indeed. So what we're probably going to see in the pit stops are, if it stays wet, are those front-wheel drive cars only needing to change the front tyres on their cars. That's not going to help the front to rear balance though, and once we get underway, there is other than driving the car round and round, there is no other way. There's no artificial way of getting heat into those rear tyres.
So, coolish day and a little bit of rain in the air as well. Here's Diana then with hopefully a catch-up with Mike Simpson.
Mike, obviously you've just got out the car, you've had a couple of races here in Spa. We're just waiting for the TCR race to start. How was conditions out there and how did it go for you?
Typical Spa, so cold, I think it's still 7 degrees. We started off dry today, which was good. Got to drive the prototypes around Spa, which is always a great feeling. This circuit feels like it was designed for our car, which is similar to a P2 car. Had a great race. Everybody did well. Jetta won, which is good for business. And it was great to see the prototype race happen for Creventic. So it's not quite happened all year since Dubai. And it's a great concept. We just need more cars to come out. I mean, you pay for your team, the truck, everybody to get here, and you know, ELMS and all the other events, you do a 4-hour race where it's only a couple of extra sets of tyres and you can race again. So if something happens race 1, you can get out in race 2. And I think it will grow. We just need people to come and support it, really.
Well, it's definitely growing and everyone's interested in it. We were watching you from the sidelines while you were out there on track, but from a driver's perspective, tell us what these drivers are likely to experience and how they're going to deal with these constant changing conditions, bearing in mind how the race format works.
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully this is in for the day for the drivers now. Yesterday was wet, changing conditions. One part of the circuit was starting to dry, the other was staying wet, so hopefully they'll stay on the wet tyres, but the spray will be the main thing. There's a big crash in the Proto race at Radion lap 1 because you're unsighted, and if you get yourself over the curb at Radion and you don't know you're actually there and you're hard on the gas, you're going to know about it. So, you know, Spa's playing its hand as it always does, and I think everybody just needs to stay calm, and it's a long race, and just build up to it.
What's the biggest challenge they'll have? I mean, obviously the tyres, because of the temperature and the conditions, getting the heat in the tyres is a little bit more tricky. Is that going to be the main thing, do you think, that's going to come into play at the start? Yeah,
the Hankook, if it's new stickered tyre, it can be tricky for a couple of laps, and then it's great. It's in for, you can run on it into drying conditions. It's a very durable tyre, so playing themselves into the race, and just remember how long it is, and there's another 2 or 3 guys to get in after them. That's the key thing.
Right, Mike, well, I can hear the cars. I think they're making their way out to the track. So thanks very much for chatting to us. I bet you're quite glad, really, because I've now stopped you having to help with that pack-up.
Yeah, it's good. Go for a massage and have a beer now. Watch these guys.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot.
Good luck.
Mike Simpson, who took part in the 12 hours, or what turned out to be a 10-hour combined race, although it was 2 separate 5 hours in the end. So 5 hours yesterday, 5 hours today for the Proto Series. Another initiative set rolling by the Creventic promoter from the Netherlands this year, and looking forward to seeing where the Proto Series goes next year as well, as steady growth, I think, is the target for that championship, incorporating LMP2, LMP3 and some SPX cars this weekend as well. But 48 cars are now rolling down the Kemmel Straight, or should I say up the Kemmel Straight, because it's a steady old climb all the way to Les Combes after you leave Radion Corner, and this is the plummet downhill now after Speaker's Corner. The 235 machine looks to be at the back of the field now. Was that late leaving the pit lane, because 142 should have been the final car off the grid. 235 was due to start alongside it on the 24th row. And the Duo racing car from Luxembourg, again, struggled in qualifying yesterday. I believe that car didn't set a time. So we'll look forward to seeing how Nicolas Schmidt gets on. The Frenchman, joined by other family member Frédéric. And we've got Alexander Wetzlich and Jean-Marie Dumont as part of the quartet in car 235. Looking to make progress, I'm sure, in the early part of this 12-hour race. The clock has started, and we're already down to 3 hours and 2 minutes as the 217 car, one of our many onboard camera cars, is just heading through Campus Corner now on the right-hander at Stavelot, which is turn 15. And then this frightening end to the lap begins. Curve Paul Frere, the right-hand section. Blanchimont, which is one of those cars that sort of transcends motorsport really. Blanchimont, one of those corners that everybody knows, even without necessarily knowing what track it's at, I would suggest. It's very, very fast, and if you get that wrong, you'll know about it.
You go through Blanchimont, Johnny, and you can think back and you think, I've just put in a perfect lap here, my deltas are up, and you've then got that Mickey Mouse tricky little bus stop chicane, which is virtually a hairpin right followed by a hairpin left. The corners are so tight as they come firing out of that sweeping, almost flat out left-hander. Certainly not be flat out in these conditions, though. Still very, very wet track conditions as the safety car, the pace car, brings the field round and now slows them down. As we've come through Blanchimont, there is now a right-hand kink before we go into the braking area for the very slow chicane that we call the bus stop. Certainly not bus stop shaped anymore. It is a right-left chicane, slows the cars right down. And the final turn is that very tricky left-hander back onto the start-finish straight, where just how quickly can I get the power on? Not too quickly, because you're going to totally spoil your lap time completely. Here we go.
Third row is the two RTR Projects KTM crossbows from the Czech Republic. They could make some places in the early stages. Just ahead of them, we've got two Mercedes AMGs, but it's the combination of Bernd Schneider in the Mercedes AMG from Black Falcon up alongside Rick Breukers as the first ever Spa 12 Hours is about to get underway here on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network. Hopefully you've found a live stream somewhere as well to enjoy audio and pictures combined, because we're underway and 48 cars pile their way into La Source corner for the first time. There's a big queue down to the right-hand hairpin that kicks the lap off, with cars 5 abreast in places, windscreen wipers working overtime just to try and pick out the track in front. But it looks to be a good start from Bernd Schneider, who's got the jump on the Seat up alongside him, and the German leads the way then up through Eau Rouge and Radeon for the first time. In fact, it's 3 Mercedes now that lead the way, with other starting drivers Adam Christodoulou in the number 2 Mercedes and Fabian Hamprecht in the number 211 car. So Rick Breukers already back to 4th position. That was kind of expected, and Breukers now with a real job on his hands to keep behind him the two RTR Project KTMs. One of them is by already, I think. No, the other one struggled and has allowed the Monlaut competition Seat through, together with the LMS Racing Machine, one of many Bas Kouten cars here this weekend. Some of them entered by Bas Kouten and some of them powered by Bas Kouten. And we'll see how those cars do. But a great sight they've made so far down the Kemmel Straight. Everybody is safely around the first half lap, Joe Bradley.
Yeah, very clean. Congratulations to everyone for a very sensible start of this 12-hour motor race. And we didn't see very, very tricky conditions. I'm quite sure that when the drivers went onto the brake pedal for La Source, it was a voyage of discovery for everyone. And then it became pretty much a drag race down out of La Source, down, and who was going to get through and into Eau Rouge first. And it's a Mercedes 1, 2, 3 by the looks of things very early in this lap, and our onboard monitors are showing very tricky conditions, with cars going outside of track limits just purely because of lack of grip. But I'm glad to see that we have had an event, a very uneventful first lap there, with very little contact from what I could see, Johnny, and that just shows me that everyone's being sensible. Certainly we've got an SP3 GT4 class split at the front of this field, and I'm quite sure that as we progress we're going to see little clumps of cars breaking off and having little races of their own.
I'm loving the laminated track mat which is tank taped into the roof line of the 216 car. A few people actually deciding to do that, not because you need the mat to get around the track, but of course if you have an issue with the car and it conks out, it comes to a halt, far better to identify where you are by a corner number rather than a name necessarily, and then you can just look up at the map, radio back to the team and say, I'm stuck at turn 15, stuck at turn 7, and I need some help, basically. This is where I am. I try and talk them through the issue, and it's just better to have that visual guide immediately in front of you. Rick Breukers coming towards the end of his first lap. Bernd Schneider, though, will lead it by half a second from Adam Christodoulou in the second of the Mercedes AMG test team car. So that's the Black Falcon edition, trying to chase down the other Black Falcon car, Schneider and Christodoulou. And then we have the Uwe Altzen machine in 3rd position, the 211 car. RTR Projects, and that car started by Eric Yanis, is up to 4th position. Rick Breukers slipping to 5th then. Antti Burry's had a good start in the LMS Racing, powered by Bas Kouten Seat Leon. That car is running in 6th place, the 119 car. And then the all-Spanish lineup for 107. In fact, not quite all Spanish, because Jürgen Schmidt representing Belgium in that quartet as well. The Monlaut competition car is running in 7th place, ahead of car 226, which has also had a 266 rather, which has also had a good start. Started 14th and is now in 8th position, and driving that Matthias Kaiser. So downhill out of La Source go a great gaggle of cars. Lovely to see one of the older BMW Z3s in the field as well, and that is in a slightly darker yellow colour, like a gold colour in the BMW Z3, just working its way through Radeon corner now. The Dan Agro Racing machine at 185 just heading out of La Source as well. That started from 46th position.
Danish driver lineup in that car, the Renault Clio in the Year 2 class, and 3 Danish drivers forming that team. One of our in-car cameras on the live stream available to you, giving you some great pictures if you are able to tune in on the live stream, radiolamod.com or 24hseries.com for those great pictures.
Let's get a little more from Diana Binks, who's down in the F1 pit lane, with Dan Wheeler from Synchro Motorsport.
Dan, the race is underway. We've been waiting quite some time for it to get underway. Are you happy with the start? I'm assuming it's Martin in the car.
Yeah, that's right. Martin started. Just pleased to see no yellow flags at the first corner after he'd gone through, so I knew there was no incidents for him to get involved in there. Yeah, and he seems to be running well. He's made up a few places, which quite frankly wasn't the intention because we qualified a bit higher up than we expected to anyway, but seems to be keeping it out of trouble so far.
Was it? Is it always nervous for you when you watch? You know, you're watching your teammate out there at the start of a race like this. There was so many cars going in at that first corner together.
Yeah, it's awful, absolutely awful. But he's a trusted pair of hands and generally gets it through. He normally starts and normally does a fair job. So we leave it like that, and I'll get in when there's a bit more room around us.
Well, they're all just flying past us now here in this pit. So what's the plan for Martin? Is he going to stay out there for an hour or so?
Well, we haven't been able to do any fuel runs really because of the weather, but I guess we should, with this sort of weather, we'll be all right to do the 2 hours, which is always our intention, try and get the maximum out of each allowed pit time. And then Alan will jump in for the final hour. I've got the day off today.
Oh, well, you can talk to us.
Sorry, I can't.
You can talk to us.
Yeah, absolutely, but much better.
I know you've not had much running, obviously, practice straight into qualifying, but were you happy really with the balance that you had in the car?
Yeah, the car seems absolutely fine. We had a little bit of an issue yesterday morning, which meant actually I didn't get out in the car at all. But the other guys got enough laps done. I was here a few weeks ago in a different series, so they let me race.
All right, for the moment, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
I think that's a great idea, giving Martin Byford the duties at the start of this race. Martin Byford, a very experienced driver, 2007 Clio Cup champion, and if there was ever a series in a year to teach you about how to handle traffic, it was certainly that year in the Clio Cup Championship in the UK. And since then, Martin, familiar in that Synchro Motorsport Honda, and knows the car inside out. Already up to 21st overall, and indeed first in the A3 class, so class leader at the moment for the Synchro Honda.
And I'll just correct what I was saying about Bernd Schneider's Mercedes. That's the HTP car. The Black Falcon car is trying to chase him down, Adam Christodoulou. And then the Uwe Altzen Automotive AMG with Fabian Hamprecht at the wheel is the third car in the line. There's a second separating Bernd from Adam, and then another 2.5 seconds back to Hamprecht's Uwe Altzen entered car. Eric Yanis has had a good start in the RTR Projects machine. That started from the 3rd row, but is now up to 4th place. Rick Broikers, as we say, still leading TCR, but he's got 4 cars now snapping at his heels, all Seats and all of various different variety of the TCR spec car, one of the V2s, and it's the slightly older car, actually, the older generation of car, sported by LMS Racing, which is the first to be trying to catch him, with Finnish driver Antti Burri at the wheel. He's another, you mentioned about Martin Byford and Renault Clios. Well, Martin's running Formula 4s as well. I think you've run him in a Formula 4 as part of a 750 Motor Club meeting. Antti Burri, I think he was certainly doing very well in the Formula 4 Championship about 10 years ago. I'm trying to remember whether he won the championship, but he was in that category in the sort of time when Formula Ford was very big in terms of the Kent engine specification and Formula Ford Festival, things like that, something that still happens, of course. But Formula Ford in the UK has kind of been taken over now by the F4 British Championship, slicks and wings, as opposed to the road tyres and the lack of wings in the old school Formula Ford mentality.
Didn't he race in the Z-Tech days, which would have been
I think he possibly did.
Yeah, I think
so.
The
Z-Techs were slicks, were they?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to look that up, but Antti Burri was certainly a name that I became well used to.
Used to in UK racing on the, I think it was at the time that the Formula Ford, the British Formula 4 Championship was on the Toka package, actually, as a support to the British Touring Car Championship. But, yeah, another experienced driver, but Yeah, I'd had the opportunity to make history. You've heard that story so many times, John.
Well, yeah, because you managed to run through the whole thing, warts and all. I seem to remember during our Nürburgring 24-hour coverage a couple of years back when the track became iced over for a couple of hours and we turned to Joe Giaconori.
Yeah, because there was nothing else to
fill a bit of time. There's no need to do that in this race because it's been a frenetic start. It's 2 hours 50 minutes to go here at Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, and you're listening to RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network, bringing you coverage of the 5th and final round of the 24H Series Touring Car Endurance Series, and the car's just heading now through where they started their green flag lap a little while ago, that plummet downhill to Eau Rouge. Fascinating to see the prototypes through there earlier on today, smacking the ground there. The board at the bottom of the car, skid plank, creating sparks as they bottomed out, and that real compression point starts to build the G-force for the drivers. Then you allow the topography of the track to slow the car a little bit, get back on the power as soon as you dare to go up the other side and over Raidillon, try and get the car straightened up as quickly as possible, heading for the kink at the start of the Kemmel Straight. Car 216, which is the Modena Motorsports Seat Leon, running in 6th position in TCR class. And Benny Simonson, one of 5 drivers as part of the lineup there in car 216. So Benny yet to think to be installed in the car. Yes, that's not him at the moment, but we expect to see him at some stage, possibly today, certainly tomorrow. Richard Neary in the BMW M3, the V8 powered Team ABBA with Roll Centre Racing car, is running 16th and in 9th position in the GT4 class. But we now have 4 GT4 cars at the top of the times, and a slight adjustment in the order in 9th position now, because the JR Motorsport BMW, that's an E46 Coupe, has managed to get ahead of Matthias Kaiser in the Wimmerwerk Motorsport Seat. So we've got 4 GT4s at the top of the screen, and Eric Yanis actually has slipped into 3rd position now, so we didn't see that to be able to describe it to you, but the RTR Projects KTM has now got ahead of Fabian Hamprecht and is really getting into a bit of a rhythm, separated by a 1.5 seconds, those 2 cars.
Yeah, and not just and actually pulling away as well. Yeah, and leaving the 3rd Mercedes behind. And the leading Mercedes, though, they're pretty much circulating as one, distinctive by one with a green stripe livery, the other one with a yellow. The Bernd Schneider car, the 84 car, down in the entry as the Mercedes-AMG test team, as all 3 cars are. And this is purely a run in competitive conditions to give this new GT4 AMG GT Mercedes a bit of a test run before they start. Mercedes start allowing customers to buy them, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these race cars being out there, being bought by customer teams and customers drivers, and being racing around the world in GT4 categories and GT4 classes. And it remains to be seen, because we really haven't had a straight answer, Johnny, when we've asked anybody from all 3 of those teams. So are you out here competitively? Are you going for a race win? Do you want to win the 12 hours of Spa? Or is it a test? We saw them come out with these cars at Portimao in the 24H series, and it was clearly a test because they spent lots of time in the pits changing brake discs, changing brake pads, just to test and accrue data on things like pad material, disc sizes, as well as other things, damper settings, dampers, and all sorts of things. And so that rendered them uncompetitive with regards to how they did in the race. But it seems to me, and from what I can gather, you know what, Johnny? I think those questions, my questions, will be answered when we first see these cars go into the pits.
I don't think
we'll see how dynamic they are about their pit stops,
yes,
and what they actually change or run. But getting some great data here in the wet conditions here at Spa.
They clearly were not going to give anything away to you in the pit lane prior to race start, and very shortly all will become clear. There's no doubt about the fact that there's no love lost between crews like HTP, Black Falcon an Uwe Altzen automotive. I mean, how many times have we seen at the 24 Hours of Nürburgring HTP and Black Falcon taking chunks out of each other? And speaking of which, we very nearly have contact at La Source Corner between Adam Christodoulou, who wants the lead, and Bernd Schneider, who just about hangs on to it. But down the hill they go in very different colour schemes. The silver HTP Motorsport livery versus the black of Black Falcon and Adam Christodoulou. They're having a whale of a time in the soaking wet, and we'll update you on that in just a second. But more from Di now down in the pit lane.
I'm with Benny Simonson in the Modena Motorsports now. Benny, you've got the double journey this weekend, haven't you? Jumping in both cars, but you're sitting here waiting to get behind that wheel. How are things going for you so far?
Yeah, I think it looks good so far. I mean, the guys still learning the circuit. I mean, there wasn't much practice. I think everybody had about 3 laps, so I think they're still getting their foot in. But yeah, just waiting, patient.
What advice have you been giving them? Because it's difficult, isn't it? When you've not had a lot of time, you can't really make up for it opposed to just getting straight in the car.
Yeah, I mean, we've just been watching some videos and give the tips you can give. I mean, it's not easy conditions out there, so I think, you know, as the track is drying as well, it's one of those things as a driver you just pick up more and more and more as you go around. So, but we try to do as much homework as possible.
And the balance of the car, was the feedback that you're happy with the balance you've got?
Yeah, it felt okay. I only did 1 lap yesterday, so I only did 1 lap at each. So yeah, no, it's okay.
Is that where the experience of a driver like yourself comes in? You know how to sort of adjust to those situations and get the best you can from it?
Yeah, I think it's always easier for a pro driver because you're in the car a lot more often than other guys. That it's easier to just jump in, and obviously spending every day in a car, it's, as you say, you just jump in and know from experience. So you feel these things pretty straight away.
How challenging is Spa?
It's very challenging, especially in these conditions. It's quite tricky. So it's constantly changing. As we all know, it can be raining one place and not another place in the circuit. So yeah, very challenging, but awesome fun.
Thanks, Benny.
No worries, thank you.
Benny Simonson, younger brother, of course, of the late great Alan, who we lost sadly in 2013 at Le Mans 24 Hours. But Benny still doing plenty of racing throughout the course of the year, and great to see him now in slightly less high-powered machinery than the GTs that we've seen him in regularly, things like the Bathurst 12-hour, and he has raced at Silverstone, I think, in the 24-hour. I'm not sure whether that was this year or last year, but in one of the inaugural runnings of the Silverstone when Creventic took it over, the Silverstone 24 Hours, Benny was certainly there. I remember interviewing him at some unearthly hour overnight.
Yeah, definitely. Johnny, I think it's clear to see that the Mercedes teams are listening to our commentary, because our questions were answered. Whether or not they're taking this race seriously or not as a competitive entity, they definitely are, because I think that the guide to the drivers, or the instruction to those drivers, were go out and race, boys, because that's what we're seeing, and quite a race developing as we've just completed another lap, 6 laps now in the bag, with 2 hours and 42 minutes remaining in this first 3-hour segment of the 12 Hours of Spa. Bernd Schneider in the number 84 Mercedes AMG GT is still leading, but being challenged very, very aggressively by Adam Christodoulou, who's in the number 2 Mercedes, currently on the Kemmel Straight, heading towards Lacombe. And Schneider, the ever-wily, very, very experienced Bernd Schneider, driving down the right-hand side of the track into the wetter areas of the track. Now, I wonder, Johnny, if he has already got in his mind that the track, because I do not think it's raining, but we still have a very wet track. Now, if it doesn't rain, that water on the track is going to disappear and dissipate into the environment, and it's going to lead to a drier line. Now, what we'll see then is the wet tyres, the big blocks of tread forming a tread to disperse the water on the tyres, will start to overheat, and the tyres will go up very, very quickly. Looking at the track conditions, though, I don't think we are anywhere near that period of track time when we will see that, so remains to be seen. But we did see Bernd Schneider there going down the right hand side, not in a defensive way to keep Christodoulou behind him, but certainly in a way to keep the tyres cool. Maybe he's already got that in his head. He is Bernd Schneider after all.
Yes, that's I mean, it's great to have someone of Bernd's experience now taking this, as you say, mainly development drive with HTP Motorsport. Got a great history with the team, though. You throw Bernd Schneider and Adam Christodoulou at a couple of Mercedes, regardless of their spec, regardless of how new the cars are, when it's even Stevens, I think both will want to win, well, mainly this stint, let alone the 12 hours. A fabulous fight just headed across the line for 12th position with the NKPP Racing Seat. Harry Hilders currently at the wheel, trying to fend off the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4. And you'd ordinarily think that the M4 would have way more power and speed than the Seat, but I think the rain and the wet track is serving as a bit of a leveller here. The M4 just cannot lay its power down onto the tarmac quite as readily as it might be able to in the dry. Eric von dem Munkhoff is driving that. Munkhoff being the team entry as well. That car then 13th, ahead of Richard Neary's Team Aber with Roll Centre BMW M3. But right behind that car was the Modena Motorsports machine, the one that we keep getting a glimpse on the live stream of plenty of onboard footage, and it's Francis Thier, the Dutch driver, at the wheel of that Modena Motorsports Seat. And also involved in the fight, I think, was Matthias Kaiser and another Seat, this time from Wim Avert Motorsport. And this is the battle then. So Eric von dem Munkhoff right in front here of Francis Thier, heading down towards Bruxelles corner, the right-hander. So Richard Neary's actually wriggled free now. It's actually Campus corner, beg your pardon, into Stavelot now. And can Francis get up alongside Eric von dem Munkhoff in the BMW M4? Not quite. I think they're going to stay nose to tail, heading towards Curve Paul Frere and Blanchimont towards the end of this lap. Another update from Diana Binks, who's down in the pit lane.
Indy, your car's in the lead at the moment, but it's behind the wheel. It couldn't have been a more perfect start, could it?
Yeah, we have a really good start. The other team, Black Falcon, is right behind us, so we still have to watch out. And even the guys from RTR with the KTM are really quick, so we have to see what happens there with the 12 hours. But everything goes really fine, and Bird is on a really good pace.
Well, we did ask you, I think, the other day, you know, this is effectively you're testing the new car and learning what you can, but clearly when that helmet goes on, you're racing.
Yeah, true. We're here for testing, but still, what you say, when you put the helmet on, you're here for the race and you want to win. So even here, I'm sitting on my seat, and yeah, we want to push. So if we can go for the win, we go fully for it. So we will see what happens.
So watching it on the screen, what have you learned?
Well, that you have to watch out to the traffic here. It's pretty busy on track with quick cars and slow cars, so you have to watch out there and yeah, just be concentrated and focused for my stint. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And as we've been talking there to the driver, the teammate of Bernd Schneider, who leads this race, Adam Christodoulou in second. But please welcome into the battle for the overall lead, Eric Yanis in the RTR Projects KTM, because he's getting on terms with the car in second place. And the last time through was only about a second, maybe just under a second from the second place car. Now we've got the leaders getting involved in traffic, and that's perhaps playing into the hands of the car in third place, and that certainly, as the car is now the leader. Bernd Schneider turns right and then immediate left at the bus stop to complete what will be his 8th lap. The cars cross the line, very, very little in between them, and this, what was a 2-car battle, is most certainly becoming a 3-car battle, because that is definitely the KTM of Eric Yanis getting on terms. Just keeping a watching brief on how those Mercedes conduct themselves. And I'm just wondering, Johnny, as we see in 4th place, the other Mercedes GT4, AMG GT GT4, it's a mouthful, isn't it, of Fabian Hamprecht. He's dropping back, he's dropped to 14 seconds off Bernd Schneider, and I'm just wondering how different are those Mercedes. If they are a test team, then maybe we will see the cars configured differently, and subsequently from that, different levels of competitiveness.
Certainly something to think about as down towards the end of the Kemble Straight go the 2 Mercedes. I noticed that on Adam's car there's this massive, you call that a pipo pipe or a pico pipe. It has a data chip at the end of it, I think. It's a big metal strut, effectively, with a hook on the end of it. And I think there's some kind of sensor there which is registering airflow, maybe, or temperature, or I don't know, how the car's going through the air. the LMP1 cars at Le Mans run with those on a much smaller scale. But that thing is pointing skyward. It must be about 3 feet long. I'm surprised it's not a distraction to Adam Christopher.
It's not an aerial, is it?
I don't think it's an aerial. Next time I see it on the live stream, I'll point it out to you. But the HTP car doesn't have one of those, and I can't see many of the other cars in the field that carry that. But I remember chatting to people like Jim Roller before, we're talking about LMP1 cars, going, what is that thing on the front there? And it's not an aerial, it's something that monitors airflow, or maybe just, I don't know, the ambient temperature, something like that. And it's constantly retrieving data.
We have our first pit lane caller. It's certainly a Seat in the TCR class. I can't clarify a number quite for you yet. Now, that's a bit early in the proceedings. Just about half an hour of race time gone, so 30 minutes of racing has ensued, and we already have someone in the pits, so I'm quite sure that's not a scheduled stop, as we've heard from pretty much the whole field because of the wet conditions. And it is the number 266, I can tell you now, and the bonnet has gone up, always a bad sign. Now that's the Wimmerwerk Motorsport Seat, Felix Wimmer, Matthias Kaiser and Peter Gross, and 266 having a look at the timing screens coming in from pretty much the mid-pack. With the bonnet up there, clearly a problem, and it's back out. Now, that car was in 21st place overall, 10th in the TCR class. So the car came in, stopped on the pit apron, the bonnet went up, something was done, I couldn't quite see what, and now the bonnet's back down, and the car is back out. Maybe it was a visual inspection or something going on there, but that car now back into the race, and no doubt will have dropped a few places next time through. We can clarify just what has happened to that car.
It's definitely not an aerial on Adam Christodoulou's car, and I think Adam is now in the lead of the race, actually, having got by. They left La Source together, side by side, did Bernd Schneider and Adam Christodoulou, and Fabian Hamprecht would love to be involved in this fight, but he's nowhere now because he has Eric Yanis between him and Adam Christodoulou in the number 2 car. Let's have a look. Yes, Christodoulou is ahead down the Kemmel Straight, but Bernd Schneider is trying to keep alongside it there. And there is a good view of a aerial on the roof, but this thing that sticks out from the bonnet with a real hook on the end of it. And I would love to know what that does.
I think that measures airflow, Johnny. That's not a hook. That's actually a tube, a bent tube.
No, I know it's not a hook. It's hook shaped.
Yeah, it's hook shaped.
It's not designed to like in Back to the Future, where you get to 88 miles per hour and you're supposed to catch that little bit of wire that they use at the end of the film. I realise it wasn't that, but it looks a bit like that. Yes.
I think that's got a hole in the end, and it measures airflow into it. You see it on aircraft and stuff.
Okay, I see. Here's Diana again.
Well, as you saw and talked about, guys, the 266 Wimmer Motorsport car came in, and I caught the team manager as they were running back into the garage, and basically it's an electrical situation, they think. It keeps going into sort of a limp mode, they told me. They've come back into the car. They can't really get across what the real issue is, and they're just coming to come in and reboot it and get it straight back out on track.
Okay, well, thoughts with those guys, because we've barely had half an hour of this race and already the first problem, but get used to that, because that's the very nature of endurance racing. You can't guarantee your car's going to be out on the track for 12 hours, and part of the challenge of the team is to get the car to the finish. Irrespective of where you are in the order, just to get to the end of a 12-hour race is an achievement, I would say.
Absolutely, and that's what a lot of the challenge is about coming to these races. We're just talking to some of the guys this morning, some of the competitors this morning, and they were saying that very thing. It's if you come out of a 12-hour motor race on the podium, it's just icing on an already very rich cake, because the whole point of bringing your car here to any kind of endurance race, the challenge is certainly at this level. I'm not talking about World Endurance Championship level, that's too intense. That's intense. You've got to win a World Championship if you're going to do that. But here, the challenge is bringing a team of guys together and putting a car on a racetrack and getting it to last the 12 hours, and then dealing with and addressing any issue that arises. And the challenge behind the pit wall, behind the pit garage, is that in itself, not just about the drivers on the track. It's about how the team conduct themselves in the face of adversity, and that's why we love it.
Thank you so much to Stiffy Van Doormirror on Twitter, by the way, who sent a tweet to @BlackpoolJohnny and @Bradders3078. It's a pitot tube, P-I-T-O-T, Now, I'm not kidding. I have tried to Google that word for about the last 18 months, and I've been spelling it like Pico or various other different spellings anyway, and had no luck at all. I've now found pitot tube, which is a pressure measurement instrument used to measure fluid flow velocity. And that's the sort of data that these brand new GT4 cars are trying to retrieve. As I say, the HTP car's not running with one, but Adam Christodoulou is. And I think Eric Yanis now separates the two Mercedes at the head of the order. So Bernd Schneider maybe deliberately backing things off a little bit here and not wanting to push the car too hard. You don't need to win the first hour. You need to win the first 12 hours, the only 12 hours, let's say. So Bernd Schneider slipping to third position now.
I wonder, Johnny, if his tyres are wearing out. You know, we saw him go down the right-hand side of the track on the Kemmel Straight, which was a much wetter side of the track, and certainly his pace has dropped off significantly. Last time through was at 2 minutes 55. Now, his fastest time so far was at 2 minutes 52. The two cars in front of him now, that's the Christodoulou Mercedes and the Yanis RTR Projects KTM Crossbow, or Expo, that was also a 2:53. So Bernd Schneider's pace has dropped off quite significantly, and I'm wondering that Diana will be able to confirm this, whether I'm right or not, but it has actually stopped raining, because I can't see any rain falling. And if that's the case, we are going to see the track drying relatively to how we started this race. Diana, are you listening? Is it raining?
No, it's stopped raining. We're, as you can see, it's still, obviously the track's still wet, as you said, but the rain has stopped for the moment. But it does still look pretty grey behind me, so we just don't know if it's going to restart again anytime soon. But for the moment, it has stopped, and it has been stopped for around 5-10 minutes.
Right, well,
very nature of Spa, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, it is Spa. Thanks, Diana. Good news for Diana, that, and the fact that it's not raining. A woolly bobble hat is not going to get any damper than it already was. There we see the two Mercedes then circulating. I do believe we've got a change for the lead. As we go into the bus stop to complete 11 laps, we've got a new leader in the form of Eric Yanis, who will have gone ahead as they cross the line there. We'll have that confirmed on the timing screens. And who is it that crosses the line first? It is indeed the KTM of Eric Yanis takes the lead. Between Stavelot and Blanchimont, we've had a change of lead, would be my estimation. Christodoulou comes through in second. Schneider in the other Mercedes is in third. Then coming through will be in fourth place in about 10 seconds time will be Fabian Amprecht in the third of our Mercedes runners. He's now 20 seconds behind the leader. He was 14 seconds only a couple of laps ago. So without a doubt, Johnny, the Mercedes are definitely using their tyres, and maybe that what we're seeing here is their tyres going away from them. So we have definitely got a race in our hands. Just under 2.5 hours to go.
And of course, as all Creventic races are these days, we're powered by Hankook this weekend, all running on the same tyre manufacturer rubber, although they may be slightly different versions of that tyre, depending on which specification of car that we're running, different compounds in use. Clearly different tyre sizes required for the various different machinery in this 48 car field, but as Mercedes learn more about their chassis, the new GT4 spec AMG, they'll also be learning how best to set it up as far as the Hankook rubber is concerned as well. That's the beauty, I suppose, of having three different cars in the category but run by three very different teams. And Bernd Schneider then back to the second of those Mercedes as Eric Yanis now leads the race by 1.3 seconds. So Eric Yanis in this, it's still a GT4 car, so effectively in the same class as the Mercedes, but Eric Yanis now leads the way for RTR Projects and their KTM Crossbow.
Now, last time through, he was just under 2 seconds quicker than the Mercedes, and if he continues to lap 2 seconds quicker, we're soon going to see a considerable gap developing between the KTM and the Mercedes runners. Mercedes now to second, third and fourth. Rick Breukers is leading the TCR class in fifth. Started the race on the front row of the grid and has dropped off. Now his last time through was at 2 minutes 57. Now he's still 3 seconds off the cars in front of him, the GT4 spec, KTM and Mercedes, as into the pits is, or back into the pits I should say, is the number 266, the Wimmerwerks Motorsport Seat. Diana is down there, I believe. More, Diana?
I am, yes. They brought the car back and they're still having those problems. Remember I said to you earlier that it was electrical. They think it was going into limp mode, but it could only have done a lap or two since it's gone back out. They've adjusted something under the hood. I can't see. The driver's shaking his head. They're telling him to go back out, although the other crew members indicating go into the garage. But at the moment, they're restarting it, rebooting. You can probably hear it, and now he is actually going back out onto the track.
Okay, so it's a real suck it and see.
There was a flick of a switch there, Johnny, wasn't it, effectively, from what I saw there?
Yeah, but I'm still not sure it's been solved. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They have little choice but to send it back out again, maybe to do another lap and then bring it back in. No, the problem's still there, or maybe it's got slightly better or slightly worse, and they'll just muddle on through. There, by the way, if you're checking the live stream, brief glimpse of the cones that are laid out on the stretch of track between La Source and the endurance pits, because we're using the full extent of both the F1 and the endurance pit lane this weekend, irrespective of whether you're fueling the car or not. For most of the pit stops, of course, the cars will be fueled, unless it's a Seat with a problem, as those guys have got at the moment. Adam Christodoulou leading Bernd Schneider, but remember this is for second and third now, and Christodoulou a little bit wide through the third element of Les Combes. They're plummeting downhill past the campsite there and towards Bruxelles corner, the right-hander, with Schneider right on the boot lid of Christodoulou, the man from Birmingham. Here's the 217 car with, again, some concerns. This is one of 3 Modena Motorsports entries, the Seat LCR TCR, the version 3 machine, so slightly newer car. We do have V2s represented in the field as well, and this is Benny Simonson's car, by the way, the no, it's not Simonson's car. That's the other Modena Motorsports machine, and the 217 is going to be wheeled back into the garage with Dynamics not very far away, so pipe up whenever you have an update, Diana. I think you're still trying to ascertain the issue there, as are the team, seemingly. The car on the dolly jacks with the headlights now turned on, but their focus again appears to be in the engine bay.
Yeah, can't quite see what they were fiddling with there. Maybe fuel pump. Now no attention being given to what's happening under the bonnet, still checking. Down to Diana. No, Diana, we can't hear you because I think you need to drag him out. I think you need to drag him outside. Yeah, sorry about that, mate. We're going to get you wet. We're going to get your head wet. No, we don't seem to be getting Diana there, which is a shame. We can see you, but we can't hear you. So until we get those technical issues sorted, maybe you need to be really... The cameraman needs to be with you. CJ, our cameraman today, for the race here at Spa. Maybe CJ, who was filming the car and what was happening, was maybe too far away from Diana. We'll sort that out and get an update on the 217 Modena Motorsports Seat.
I really like that Sem-Speed Peugeot 308, the Racing Cup car, by the way, of the 2 Semoulins, Benoit and Francois, and Anthony Lambert is a 3rd Belgian in that Peugeot. Diana Binks making connection with us again, so let's go to Di in the pits.
Yes, as you could see, they were all frantically working around the car there. I do want to just go back in and bring the crew member out, because he was about to tell me what had happened, and I can't... I'll see if I can get him in the garage. If it goes off, I'll come back out.
Yeah, go on, dive in. We talk amongst ourselves while you sort that out. Yeah, we can
Sorry about that.
We'll stay with you.
Loud and clear.
Clearly, they're using a pretty much a mobile phone with a light on it to see, so I won't interrupt them because they are rushing around. They didn't know when it came in, and we wonder whether it was the same electrical issue as the other cars had, but they're not. As you can see, they're looking inside, and there's no indication. I think they've tried to talk to the driver. I can see they've got the software up on the laptop in the back of the garage, but we'll just try and see if we can have a little chat now, just to find out where it's going. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you're sort of busy frantically trying, if you come outside with me, if you wouldn't mind, to find out what's going on. Do you know what's the driver said to you?
Actually, the car lost power, same as yesterday, so we just have 30% of throttle, so that's why we have to check. It might be just a small sensor, it might be a small problem we need to find, and it's electrical, so it's quite difficult sometimes.
Yeah, it's frustrating, isn't it? But I mean, you're giving it a good shot here. You've got all your guys around. Who really is the most experienced there that can try and indicate which way to go?
Yes, the problem now is to locate the electrical problem. So we have the computer, we have a lot of spare parts, but we don't know what to change first. So and there is no SEAT support this weekend, so it's a bit tricky. We need to find quickly what's the problem. And we had the same issue yesterday. We changed some parts. We thought it was done, and we got the confirmation from SEAT. They say, oh, it must be this, and now we have the same problem. So maybe it's with the water or something like that. We don't know.
Okay, well, I hope you get back out there pretty soon.
Thanks you. Thanks.
Yeah, I love electrical issues, Johnny. Love them.
I'm sensing a little bit of sarcasm in the voice
Very
there,
much
Joe.
so. I'm not pretty sure that's bordering on facetiousness also.
Oh, is it? Right.
Yeah, love those. And yeah, I was about to say before that team manager there mentioned water. Water and electrics don't really mix.
No.
And I know we've had, over the course of our commentating careers, Johnny, we've had people describe problems as electrical. And when we've looked, there's been a conrod through the side. Well, of course it was electrical. Yeah, there was nothing getting to the distributor because there was no connection to the camshaft.
Yeah, anything could strip a wiring loom out or pierce it somehow.
Well, even more so these days, Johnny, we heard him say there's a problem with the car. We've got to plug a computer in for the computer to download the data to tell us what's wrong with the car.
Yes.
That's what cars are so complicated these days because they're effectively ran by a computer chip. And I'm sorry to digress, but I'm sure I saw a Mercedes just go into the pits there.
Yeah, Bernd Schneider is in at the end of lap 14. So 14 laps completed by Eric Yanis, who leads the race for RTR Projects in the KTM Crossbow GT4. Remember, there's a 2-hour drive time limit for each of these drivers. So that's the reason why we were saying it's very likely we may not see any more than 2 drivers per car today, because you can easily do it on 2 90-minute stints. But interestingly, this is not a scheduled stop for Bernd Schneider. Diana Binks with news on the 84 car. No, that's the Zest car, I beg your pardon, one of the Seats which is actually in, but the 84 car, Bernd Schneider, has gone in the pit garage. I'm not sure whether you got a view of that, Di, but
no,
you're with the Seat. Tell me more about that.
I am, yes. The same issue as before. They said it was electrical. They're still not sure, but they have had to put it into the garage. Again, it's the same thing. They've got the computer out. They're looking at the software. They're in the engine, but they're shaking their heads a little bit. They said they had this problem as well, but we heard earlier, because the conditions have changed and the water is having an effect, but at the moment it's still quite dry. It's not raining, but I will just nip down now to the AMG Mercedes garage and find out what's happening down there, because obviously all that happened as I came into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. He's getting rather busy down at the pit lane, isn't it, Joe?
Absolutely. And we saw the performance of the Schneider Mercedes going off a little bit. He certainly wasn't lapping with the same kind of lap time that he had been. And I assumed it may have been tyres. I maybe proved wrong there, because we've got the bonnet of the car is well and truly up. A huge bonnet on that AMG GT Mercedes. And certainly the problem is more than just worn out tyres on a damp rather than wet track for that Mercedes. That leaves Eric Yanis in the lead, and a fastest lap of the race there coming on lap 14, 2 minutes 51.2 for Eric Yanis there. So once he's cleared the Mercedes, he's going ever faster, and the gap is out to just under 10 seconds at 14 laps. Adam Christodoulou still in second place in that other Mercedes, and we're going to have our timing screens updated when they come through. And I think that's Yanis just about to cross the line to complete 15 laps. Very, very slippery track there as he came out of the bus stop on a full power slide. Going ever quicker though. He may be losing the back end and he may be getting some power oversteer, Johnny, but a 2 minutes 51.002 is the fastest lap of the race by that KTM.
Yeah, tremendous effort there from Eric Yanis. He's got 3 other co-drivers here this weekend with Daniel Skalicki, who is a regular with RTR Projects. Both he and Eric from the Czech Republic, together with Sergei Pavlovek, but they're joined by Austrian driver Eike Angermeyer this weekend as well. And I'm expecting to see certainly the rest of the stint being done by Eric Yanis, and then Questions as to who will go in for the second stint today. Might be Sergei Pavlovec, we'll wait and see. But here is the stricken 84 car, and Dynamics has just reached this machine now. Grabbing a quick word with teammate Indy Jonty, who is sharing with Bernd Schneider and Jörg Wiebahn. We've already heard, of course, from the resplendent in his yellow and green uniform, the man filter liveried Indy Jonty for the weekend.
I know he's a race driver, and I know his primary job is to drive the car and not concern himself with anything. It's again just the nonchalant sort of body language from Indy. Sort of tells me that this may be, from what this may be scheduled. They are the test team after all. They've not necessarily come here to win the 12 Hours of Spa, but they are using the competitive environment to test out these Mercedes-AMG GT GT4 spec cars with a view to selling them to customers. But what a great way to test. You can hire a circuit and you can go round and round and round together, or you can bring them here to a race, a proper motor race with a checkered flag at the end of it, and see how you fare. And there's literally work going on every single corner and every aspect of that number 84 Mercedes at the moment. I think Diana's already in that 84 Mercedes pit. Diana.
I don't either. Yes, I'm with Jörg, obviously Bernd's teammate for this one. We're just looking at the car in the garage, not where you want to be at this point. Clearly, we thought maybe there was an issue with tyres, but it seems as if it isn't. Can you tell us what the problem is?
Well, yeah, the car, well, obviously nobody wants to be in the pit that early, but the car is very new. It was only finished on Thursday, so we only had a very, very short shakedown on Thursday afternoon. So now we have an issue with the belt. I don't know the word, I'm sorry. It's the belt connecting light machine and water pump. So that just broke off. We have to replace it. I don't know how long it's going to take, but well, we will go back into the race.
But it looks like the guys are sort of pretty much going through the whole car, checking a number of different things. Is that just a precaution while you get the belt changed?
Yeah, well, now as we have the time, we can have a little checkup on all the issues, on all the little components on the car to make a car check. Again, the car is very new, and it's a test here for all of us, all the three Mercedes. And we want to get used to the technology with the car, get experience, and see, how the endurance is for that. And this is why we're here. Sorry, we would love to win a race, but now we have to kind of behind the field and then try our best to make it up again.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
that's a few questions answered, Johnny.
Yes, it is. And
I thought they were going to walk away with this competitively, considering how we saw them go in practice and qualifying. But as it was explained to us, they're still in the development stages, and the likelihood of them going the full 12 hours undaunted is, well, it's unlikely.
And that's the sort of endurance racing I love, in that it's raced until it breaks, and you fix it, and you race it again until it breaks, and you fix it again. And then what you do is you learn the little quirks, the little traits that this brand new car has. And I mean, that's the very nature of a car in production as well. I've always been told to buy a car towards the end of its production run rather than the start, because they've had a chance to iron out the various issues in its design. And that's exactly what you do when you first release a GT4 car. The only way to find out where it's likely to go wrong is to run it and find out that way.
And see what breaks first.
Yeah, and the guys like these are the guys that will be potentially running GT4s in the future. Black Falcon and HTP and Uwe Alton Automotive. Their mechanics are learning at the same time as well, and they'll learn what the car is susceptible to, and given time, they'll know how to deal with these various problems.
Yeah, because they've actually had, and it doesn't matter if you come into this race with the mindset of, right, this is a test. We're going to see what breaks first, and then we're going to address it. They're actually putting those mechanics and those crew members under the pressure of race conditions. Yes. Because instinctively, they'll want to do that job as quickly as possible and get that car back in the race. Doesn't matter. We're not just going to be blasé about this. We're going to be dynamic about it. And the competitive instinct of everyone here, we're all competitive, aren't we? That's why we love sport. And those guys are going to work very, very quickly and address things in a dynamic way, because of that environment that they've put themselves in to test these cars out.
The Modern Motorsports 216 Seat heading into the bus stop chicane, so called because it used to be bus stop shaped in the sort of continental description of the term. It used to go left and right and left, almost like a little lay-by. No longer does it go in that direction, but the name is retained. It's a real tricky end to the lap there. I think most of the corners around this place are rather tricky. And a unique start to a lap where you accelerate from the start line and immediately you're on the brakes and probably down to about first gear to get into that right-hand hairpin. Number 70 is a familiar car in Creventic Racing, the Coroiser Racing Lotus Evora. Again, GT4 spec machine. It's Peter Klutt, Anthony Polito and Coroiser who are the drivers in that machine. How's the 70 car doing? 20th position with Peter currently at the wheel, 10th place in GT4, and it's a 12-car class, remember, so room for improvement, I would say, but a long way to go.
Early car in the GT4 category, in the GT4 set of regulations,
yes.
The Lotus Evora, and we're seeing both ends of the spectrum, aren't we? We're seeing the beginning of GT4 in the form of that Evora, and we're also seeing the evolution of GT4, and now we see the current state-of-the-art GT4 regulations being put to bear by that Mercedes, and you can see the difference in the way that GT4 has evolved, as it invariably does. You know, GT3, remember, was brought in as a version of sports car underneath the ever-evolving GT2, and now GT3 has evolved in the same way. It's virtually running to the performance levels of what we saw at the beginning of its, you know, as the category above it. And here we are with a GT4 car with the technicalities, very, very technical race cars available to customers. And in fairness to Coroiser and Coroiser Racing, with that Lotus Evora GT4, it does. See where it is tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, Johnny, because that car will go round and round.
And remember, we've said this before about Creventic split races at Mugello and at Red Bull Ring. This first part is kind of all about staying on the lead lap within your class. Don't fall off the lead lap. That's more difficult to do at a 7-kilometre track, as Spa-Francorchamps is, 4.6 miles, and as long as you're starting within touching distance of your fellow class members, then you're really in with a good shout with 9 hours to go. It's a 16-car field in TCE. That's the one that's most mouth-watering for me. Highly competitive. We still have 3 TCR cars in the overall top 6. Rick Broikers managing to fend off Antti Burri, who was the 2012 British Formula 4 champion, by the way. I was tying myself in knots trying to work out where Burri had finished in the championship. It was only 5 years ago. And Antti Burri now piloting this LMS Racing powered by Baz Cowton car. Briefly, we had yellow flags out on the circuit there, but they've been withdrawn very swiftly, so maybe a spin and a continue for one of the cars. And the other machine that we've not mentioned an awful lot about is the Monlau Competition entered machine from Spain, and 3 Spaniards and a Belgian driver. Currently at the wheel, it's Jose Manuel Perez A-car. He's joined by Alba Cano Ramirez, Alvaro Bayo, and Jürgen Smet, who is the Belgian driver. So it's probably Jürgen Smey, actually, to give it the correct pronunciation. And that's the Monlau Competition car that runs 3rd in TCR and 6th overall. Just ahead of the 223 car, which is Sergei Pavlovec on double duty this weekend. I'm hearing actually from London that it's not necessarily Smey. It might be a German name, which the family possibly moved to Belgium, so I'm going to continue with Jürgen Smet, the Belgian driver with very much a German pronounced name. Sergei Pavlovec, as I say, will be seen in the 223 car, will be seen in the 221 car potentially. His name is against both, but he's currently in the 7th placed RTR Projects KTM. And we've had a message from, which one do you want to mention, Joe?
Nothing,
Chris?
nothing.
No? Okay, no. Well, I'll read that in a moment off air then. Yeah. JR Motorsport car is in 8th position. JR Motorsport have run Hondas in the past. They're here with a BMW E46 Coupe, though, the Dutch team. Vord Sluis, Nick Gielen and Marco Poland are the drivers, and it's Marco currently at the wheel of the 118 car in 8th position. Work continuing on for the Is this the Mercedes that we're underneath on the live stream? Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's the Bernd Schneider Mercedes, Johnny. And certainly a lot more work than an auxiliary belt is from what I can gather there, with a lot of work going on in pretty much every single corner of the car. Now, they may be trying out things, but certainly they're underneath the car, they're underneath the engine bay part of that AMG GT, and they may even, with the auxiliary belt failing, that was the description we got from Bernd's teammate Jörg, it may be that they're doing other things. Johnny, you mentioned the Monlau team, the Monlau Competition SEAT. They are one of the teams that's in contention for the championship, because we're not just racing for 12 hours here, we're racing for the 2017 TCE Championship here this weekend. And Monlau at the moment, currently second in the championship, in the team's championship that is, only 1 point from the championship leader, which is the QSR Racing School BMW. And we'll find out, see where the 154 car is. They're currently in 30th place, third in the Cook 1 class. So not quite sure how that's going to pan out. Only another 2 points behind the leader of the championship is the CWS Ginetta. Colin White's Ginetta 178 is in, just looking for Colin on the timing screens. Where is he? He was up there. He's dropped out of the... Oh, there he is. 14th. Mathieson at the wheel. Only 2 drivers down to drive the 178 Ginetta, Johnny, which is a bit of a change. Colin White being the other driver. But the 178 Ginetta, the QSR Racing School BMW and the Monlau Competition SEAT, all in contention to win the 2017 championship.
Yeah, it's been a really good year in the TCR Championship, and you've now been at 3 of the 5 races, I think I'm right in saying. We've had the 24H at 24 hours at Silverstone, indeed, to kick things off in April. Then there was a 12-hour race at Manicourt in the middle portion of April. July saw a visit to Misano for a 24-hour event, and then we had a great entry at Barcelona for the 24 hours, and we end here in Spa for a 12-hour affair.
Yeah, we've had the we've covered the 3 big races, the Silverstone, Barcelona and Spa. And I say big races not only from the sense of being at such historic racetracks like Silverstone, like the Circuit of Catalonia and now Spa-Francorchamps, but also big races in the form of the bigger size grids that we've been able to bring you, and live streaming and commentary on radiolemont.com and 24hseries.com. The calendar for next year is finally coming to be becoming finalised, and we'll have an announcement tomorrow during our race coverage.
Are we going to have an exclusive, Joe?
We're going to have an exclusive, Johnny.
Here on RS1?
Here on RS1.
Part of the Radio Show Limited Network?
Absolutely, an exclusive.
Good gracious.
When Gary Willems will be announcing the calendar. Now, he's stressed provisional, but he's quite confident that the provisional calendar is the final calendar.
Right.
And it's just down to the formalities of signing off things and crossing the T's and dotting the I's.
Yes.
So more of that tomorrow, Johnny. We'll be finding out what we're going to be able to bring to you and what tracks we're going to be visiting. And an excitement also in the form of a slight, well, not even a slight, but a change of regulations with regards to how we go racing in the 24H series.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that is reason alone to come back to the Radio Show Limited Network tomorrow for our full coverage of the remaining 9 hours in the 12 hours of Spa-Francorchamps. And as I say, we'll be giving you live play-by-play commentary, whether either solely audio, maybe you're taking us out and about via the TuneIn app and various other ways that you can listen to the Radio Show Limited Network here on RS1. It's a busy weekend actually for the RSL network, with broadcasting taking place on all 3 of our channels. But yeah, if you want news on how the 24H series will pan out for 2018, we're going to bring that to you live on air tomorrow. I mentioned a little bit about the 107 Monlau Competition SEAT. They've actually had 2 wins this year in the TCR category. Jürgen Smet, I should say, was part of the lineup in Misano, winning that race with Albacano Ramirez, Jaime Font Casas, who's not here this weekend, and Jose Manuel Perez Acart, who is here and is actually at the wheel of the car, number 107. But they were winners at Mazzano and Manicure. Other TCR winners this year have included the Team Bleekemolen squad at Barcelona. That was Sebastian and Michael Bleekemolen, along with Melvin de Groot and René Steenmetz. And those drivers also won TCR at Silverstone at the start of the year. So are we going to have an entirely different winner in the TCR Championship? So we'll wait and see. Eric Yanis for RTR Projects leads the way. We'll be doing, by the way, an hourly update of sorts here on RS1 to give you a rundown of how the classes look in about 10 minutes' time. And I think it's probably best to stick to the hour mark rather than...
On the clock, you mean, rather than race time?
That just makes a little more sense to me.
It's just to
seeing
us.
as we had 3 hours and 5 minutes.
Yes.
At 2:45. We started at 2:45.
Yes.
It's a 3 hour and 5 minute chunk. It's just better, is it not, to do an hourly update bang on 4 o'clock or 4 o'clock Central European time. We'll do it at 5 o'clock and we'll do it at the end of the race.
Johnny Palmer, insensible shocker.
Good heavens.
Yes, because we've all the guys have been
going to last.
The race has been going now for it's been going for an hour and 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now we are expecting, so that means that the drivers in these cars, the ones that haven't pitted yet, and in fact we've only really seen 2 or 3 cars pitted out of schedule for issues that are being addressed. We're seeing the drivers that have now been at the wheel of the car for an hour and 5 minutes, because these are the drivers that started the race. Now we expect, because of the wet conditions, we aren't going to be stifled, we aren't going to be restricted by tyre wear, and we aren't going to be restricted by fuel. We are going to be restricted, however, by the race regulations, by the series regulations, which only allow a driver to do a full 2 hours at any one stint. So when we get towards that 2 hour mark, that will give us a bit of an idea as to when we were likely to see some of our cars pit. And on seeing that, I talk about being tyre limited. We still haven't had a recurrence of any raindrops or any rainfall, and that track does look like it's drying more and more. It's just basically a different shade of grey, isn't it? It's a less darker shade of grey. Still spray coming up from the cars as they take to the right-hand side of the Kemmel Straight. Now that could be for reasons of getting the tyres through water and cooling the tyres off so that they don't just tear the shreds off the tread, or it could be that they're looking for grip offline, off the racing line. That number 84 Mercedes still in the garage and has now dropped down to 46th place. Another 2 cars that are still in the pits, the 217 Modena Motorsport Seat, as is the 266 numbered Wimmerwerks Motorsport Seat, both in with electrical problems. And of course the Schneider Mercedes now completed 14 laps in difference to the leading KTM on 21 laps completed. So I think the Schneider Mercedes, number 84 Mercedes, pretty much working its way out of contention of any kind of podium here. As the field then continue, and there is no doubt about it, we have got the track drying, and we will see a dry line form on some of the faster sections of the track, no doubt. That's where the cars will be moving. Most of the water still very wet at the top of Radion. And let's get down to Diana Binks, who's I can hear faintly in the background. Diane, have you got something for us down there?
I'm back down at the number 84. Obviously, I don't know if you've seen you've probably seen on the shots that Jorge has got into the car. He reckons he's going out in around 5 to 10 minutes. They're just literally checking everything now because they've got those moments that they can do that. But talking to a couple of the other teams here, one thing to note, Joe, is that some people are not managing the fuel as well as they thought they would, and they think that's back down to the conditions on track with the rain and just how they manage the fuel. But that might be an issue as we head into the next hour.
Thanks, Diana. Be interesting to hear what's coming from the cars, the drivers on the radio, on the team radio, just as to how they feel about their tyre wear as well. I'm just intrigued. Looking at the live stream, we've certainly got a drying line appearing across the start-finish straight, but various other parts of the track. It's because the ambient temperature is so low, we're not actually drying it through the warmth of the atmosphere.
Yes,
it's still cold, so it's not a good drying day, Johnny.
It certainly is.
So you can take your shirts in.
You
mate.
wouldn't put your undies out,
no,
would
you wouldn't, would you?
And hope that they were dry at the end of the day,
No,
because
no.
it just, I mean, yes, it's cool, and I mean, I've suggested to you that it's slightly less breezy today. It was really blustery yesterday, and I think that obviously cooled the ambient temperature as well. But I think it's quite a bit of moisture in the air as well. So even though it's not raining, you know, the cloud cover is creating some moisture, and that's being retained on the track as well. Lack of heat in the day, but also just generally it's a bit wet and murky and miserable. Out of Les Combes go a great clump of Seats mainly. There is a TCR Golf in there though as well, and the CAD Speed Audi. And those cars scrapping away for, where's the CAD Speed Audi up to now? 12th position. Peter Kate at the wheel of the 108 car, powered by Tregothnan Tea this weekend, which is brewed...
As are we.
Brewed in Truro, Cornwall, and it tastes very, very nice.
I should really put the kettle on after that, Johnny.
Well, I thought that was my cue to you to do that. Did you not get the hint?
Yeah.
Crack on, son.
That is the...
We've been blessed with a great deal of facility here this weekend in a commentary box I'm not quite used to in terms of there's a coffee pot, there's a kettle, there are munchies as well that will keep us going, mainly for tomorrow. We're being eased into this weekend after a light session yesterday of practice and qualifying combined, which took a little over an hour to broadcast. And if you weren't around for Friday coverage here on RS1, that is available now as a podcast to download and to listen on demand, listen when you wish, as part of the Radio Show Limited network. Yes, here is Diana. Let's get the update from you. I'm hearing you, Di.
We'll go back into the garage. The 164, Bernard Wagner's with us, just jumped out of the car. What's happened?
It was a good turn. I was really fast, but now I had engine problem. It was too hot, the engine, and we will see what happened. Yes, I don't know.
Before that happened, though, were you finding the dry line on the track? What are the conditions like now? What are the conditions like now?
Yeah, it's really, sometimes it's really dry now, but only the last time. It was wet the whole time. The last 3 turns, then maybe it was a little bit dry, but I think
apologies about that. I thought that Diana was. We were hearing Diana through that interview, but my apologies. We will try and get news from Diana very shortly, as the cars then work their way down the Kemmel Straight, and the Mercedes that had led this race, the number 2 car, is now down to 2nd position with Adam Christodoulou piloting that, 37 and a bit seconds behind Eric Yanis. That car is now pitting, in fact, the 221 car of Yanis down pit road from the lead of the race, and Fabian Hamprecht, the 211 car, in 3rd position, may well inherit 2nd place depending on when Eric Yanis rejoins the race. This looks like, this smacks to me as slightly more scheduled pit stop for Eric Yanis and the RTR Projects KTM crossbar, which is now down to the fueling area. But there's drama here for the 178 car. That's the CWS entered machine, which has left the track at Les Combes, and it looks like that Ginetta G55 is beached on the curb with rear wheels on the grass. So who do we have at the wheel of the 178 car? Just scanning down the order, it's Patrick Mathieson who is at the wheel, sharing that car with Colin White. It's Colin's car, and he arrived here on Thursday afternoon in the familiar turquoise and black coach, which carries that Ginetta with a little trailer on the back as well. And Patrick Mathieson, who has raced in the UK in things like the British GT Championship in recent years, now needing the aid of 3 marshals to be pushed from the grass and back onto the track. Brave marshals. Obviously, people needing to obey the yellow flags that will be displayed at Les Combes corner whilst this car is recovered to the track. It's just smoking very gently, or letting off some steam at least. And obviously, there is 0 grip out on the
I think it's beach, Johnny. I think the belly of the middle of the car has been grounded on the curbside there.
Maybe. The rear wheels clearly are in contact with the grass, but the grass is offering no grip whatsoever because the amount of rainfall we've had through the course of the last week or so. And as you can see, clearly the car on wet tyres, if you're watching the live stream, that is. So the marshals now just waiting for the gap in the traffic, effectively, and a signal from the marshals on the next post. Now, finally, the car can be let free from the grass. I just wonder whether it took a trip over the weeds initially and then back onto the circuit. But we are now, we are now back onto the track for the CWS car. As I say, my apologies that we weren't able to hear from Diana Binks a little while ago. That was down to operator error on a part of Jay Palmer. Joshua Barrett's been in touch to confirm we could hear the driver in the last interview. That's interesting, because I couldn't, because
we're making tea for you, Johnny.
Yes. Okay, well, that's good news. I have no idea how you managed to hear him, because the fader that I normally open to allow Diana to be heard wasn't open. So I've managed to find some kind of backdoor route onto my my desk, clearly, for that to happen. Anyway, I digress, and I'm talking production values on air.
Got a question from Chris Humphreys. Thanks, Chris. There was it's something that we've mentioned on Midweek Motorsport, the Midweek show. There was a question on how Mercedes AMG GT4 has been allowed. Anyone know what the issue is? Now, I'm not aware of any issue. I take it what Chris means is how it's been allowed into the how the AMG GT has been allowed into GT4 spec.
Yes.
I'm not aware of anything. Dad, I think we've got Diana ready again. Diana?
You can hear me this time.
We can.
Yeah, we were having some technical issues earlier, but the Bastock Motorsport car number 164. I did talk to one of the drivers. He came out and you couldn't hear us, unfortunately, but he again said they were having some electrical problems, so he had to come in. But before that, they were struggling to manage the tyres. He said there is a dry line now around the circuit, and it's just with the electrical issues, they've had to go in. They're not sure yet when they will get back out. As you can see, they're underneath the car trying to find out what those problems are. So disappointment here for them, but if they can get back out, they certainly will be.
It's great to see the Kia range, the Kia marque, being representative. I think it's a pretty little race car, is that, and don't be taken in by the lack of bulbous wheel arches or anything. That is a properly developed, properly modified car that we see, and it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation for that car to be now up on its high jacks and having an issue addressed. The Kia Ceed, they're in the A2 class, so that car is competing against things like Clio Cup cars and BMW 120 diesels. So that car, ideal for the A2 class and the A2 runners, of which we have a good 5 cars in that class running for honours at the 12 Hours of Spa. Back to the front of the field with stint time for these the current drivers, the drivers that took the start, just over, coming up to 1 hour and 18 minutes. And as you heard Diana, we've been looking and aiming towards 2 hours being the mark when we see the front runners coming in. And I'm sure they are in tyre save mode. And we can see from our pictures out on the circuit from various camera angles that there is a definite dry line appearing. It's taking a lot longer than it would do. So here, if we were, because of the low ambient temperature, we're completely relying upon the cars moving the moisture off the racing line. And parts of this circuit, parts of the Spa circuit, places like Pouhon, and through the fan right and left, very, very fast sections of this track, not to mention Stavelot and the campus corner where you are leaning on the car. That is going to absolutely tear apart these treaded tyres. Cars all starting on wet tyres because of the very wet track conditions, but now as we progress into the second hour of this race, with coming up to 1 hour and 45 minutes remaining, we are getting into the realms of maybe an early pit stop to put these cars onto slicks. And with changeable conditions comes the headache of tyre choice, and here we are seeing from our in-car footage in the 216 Modena Motorsport Seat going right off the track there through Pouhon and exceeding track limits, no doubt, but not fighting the car back on and chancing a spin, just having to go with it. So changeable conditions brings out the added challenge of just what tyres to be on at what given time, and you can bet your bottom dollar if that line continues to dry and we see people going for slick tyres, you can bet your bottom dollar that shortly after that we'll see the rain start again, because it is forecast to be on and off. Exactly when is pretty much impossible to forecast here at Spa-Francorchamps. Always has been.
That's the tricky thing, isn't it, about the crossover period, I suppose, where wet tyres need to be changed to slicks, and some teams are going to bite the bullet, grasp the nettle and gamble on it. Other teams can then judge their decision off the back of that.
And the problem, Johnny, with multi-class racing of such different and varying speeds, you do have to go offline onto a damp track, which is not what you want to do on slicks.
Yeah. Let's get an update from Diana again, who is with the Aberystwyth Roll Centre crew.
Richard Neary, you've just jumped out of that car. How was the first about hour and a half, I think it is now, behind the wheel?
Yeah, it was good. It was quite exciting. We qualified 16th, which I think was quite a bit back from where our natural pace should be. So I had quite a lot of work to do. I got quite a way up, and then the car had a misfire, and I lost about 6 or 7 places. So then everyone had spread out and got away from me. So the second half of my stint was really exciting for me, because I had a lot of work to do to try and get the car back to where it should be. I think we came in 8th, and I went out in 16th. And we thought we could try and maybe get to 5th. That's where we were hoping. So not quite what we wanted to be, but the car's in one piece and we're still here, so lots of time yet.
Oh, there's absolutely lots of time yet, and the conditions are changing. I think the wind's just picked up slightly again. I didn't see who jumped in, Richard, as you got out.
Graham Coombs has just jumped in now, and he'll run it to the end of this session.
How were conditions changing out on the track, and was it a case of managing the tyres?
No, it isn't dry enough yet that you've got to look after the tyres. You're not running on natural lines in a couple of areas anyway because they're rubbered up too much. But there is a drying line appearing, and I think within another half an hour there might be some decisions to be made.
So obviously staying on wets for the moment, not seen anyone on slicks yet, probably, as you say, just a bit too early. What was your experience of sort of managing the traffic?
Yeah, it was fine. Some really, really good driving, to be honest. A couple of the TCR cars, we did 4 corners side by side, all 4 corners, until we came across another back marker so I could actually get past them. And everyone was really great, really courteous. Racing room, but only enough. So it was exciting.
And are things going to plan strategy-wise? Because we've spoken to a couple of teams and perhaps the fuel management hasn't sort of worked to their favour at the moment.
Yeah, we've not quite got the fuel strategy correct, because we elected a strategy before we filled our tank, and we actually can't. We're on a 120 litre fuel fill and we can only get 108 in our tank because the refuelling lane is on a really steep incline and our tank just won't fill. So we may be, I mean, if the conditions stay like they are, it's irrelevant because we can't run anywhere near our minimum reference, but if it dried out it may hurt us, but we'll have to see.
Thanks for the moment, Richard.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Interesting point Richard Neary makes there. More on that in a second, but there's big drama for the, I think that's the Motorsport International Golf, Volkswagen Golf from the TCR class. If it is, then that's the Vincent Deprier, Paul Lejeune and Maxime Potti entry. Car 163, yes, that's the number on the rear screen of that car as well. The door is open, which doesn't help because that's where the car number is normally placed, but the driver's door...
Is that the top of Radion, John?
Or possibly the passenger door, actually, is out. Is it the top of Radion? You may not be far off that, actually. Yes, there's the climb out of Eau Rouge, and it looks like the car, rather than turning right through the bit after Eau Rouge and then needing to go through the left-hand kink at Radion, it's gone straight on and into the tyre barrier, hasn't it?
He's kind of lifted the tyre barrier in the kind of the nose of the car, just to describe it for our listeners on RS1. The nose of the car has lifted the tyre barrier, and the tyre barrier is virtually on the bonnet of the car. And we're now able to pull down. Remember, that's a left-hand drive car, so we're not able to get to the driver other than through the passenger door. And we're just about to hitch a tow rope to the rear of the car and pull that car out. I think the tow rope's just given in or something there, because we were about to pull that car out. Now we're going to have another go at it. So we are retrieving that car. We're under code 60 at the moment. Now, what does that mean, everyone? It means that purple flags with a white circle and the big white number 60 on them are being waved at the drivers all the way around the circuit on our marshals posts. And what that indicates is that all cars everywhere on the circuit, the whole circuit, must slow down to a 60-kilometre speed limit. Anyone who breaches that will be penalised. And what that does is it kind of sterilises and sanitises the track to enable our crews to retrieve the cars, which we're seeing at the moment. Now, that car being pulled out from under the barrier just sits back down onto its floor. Now, I'm hoping that... Now, you know what? To hit a tyre barrier and lift it onto the bonnet of your car, you've got to have gone in pretty heavy. And that's a very fast part of the track. And we saw yesterday the kinetic Seat hitting the tyre barrier in a very relatively light way, but still encountering suspension damage on the car. So I'm just hoping that that Seat isn't too badly damaged and can be fixed. It's the number 163, Johnny.
Yes, it is. So my initial fears for the 163 car were correct. The Motorsport International entered car. They're racing at their home venue, being a Belgian squad. Great to see, actually, this being an F1 circuit, it has, along with flag marshals, so actual flags being waved, there are also the square LED screens, the kind you might find on motorways up and down the UK and probably on the continent as well. And particularly for the Spa 24 hours, when it's very, very dark, far better for the digital screens to take over from the more traditional flags. But it's great to see that there's actually there is a Code 60 LED screen as well, and that's being displayed at the end of the main straight.
Now, another series, Code 60s, are effectively a full course caution, a full course yellow. And what tactically, what everyone would be doing would be to pit stop and go for fuel. Which would be the logical thing to do. However, it's a little bit different in the TCE series. Under Code 60, when you pit for fuel, you're only allowed to be allocated 50% of your fuel allocation. So at the moment, the leading Mercedes is in. It's been into its pit stall. It's already in the fuel station, which, as we heard from Richard Neary, is on the downward slope of the endurance pits. And let's have a word back down in the pits, so we've got more drivers to talk to, I think, Diana?
Yes, there's a lot going on down here in the pits. As you said, that Code 60 has caused some frantic action in the pit lane. John Chen from the number 218 Modena Motorsport. John, you've just jumped out from your stint. Was it planned to come in at that moment, or did you wait for that opportunity with the Code 60?
Yes, wait for opportunity, and team told me to come in and change driver, take advantage of that. And first lap, my first few laps go out, total lock up, drop way to the last. Then I gradually get used to it, start catching up and getting it better and better. Because this is the first time in Spa, very, very first time.
So it's obviously completely amazed you so far, but you've managed to keep control of the car. How challenging is it out there?
Oh yeah, it's very exciting, and this is a brand new track, and I always wanted, this is my bucket list, and I want to do this, and I get to do this time. Of course, I'm taking the first 10. A lot of responsibility, because if I have any incident, my co-driver is going to kill me.
And how have you enjoyed the circuit? Because as we said before, it's very challenging, and for someone that's not been here before to come in with limited time on the track and then go straight into the race.
It's amazing. I think it's an amazing track, and this is wonderful. High speed and taking that. You know, it's just very, very exciting for us to be here.
So what was it that made you want to drive at Spa?
Well, has history, has all the famous driver and the F1 track, and a couple of them, some in the corner are world famous and taking it. Oh, it's exciting.
And how did you find it with all the cars that are on the grid? We've got 48 cars here at Spa on this race. I mean, there's an awful lot going on, isn't there?
Oh yes, you check your mirror left and right. There's a lot of fast driver, and the minute they're not there, and the minute they're here, wow! A couple of times they're very close, but it's close call. But anyway, I caught it. So it's just be careful, finish the race, and safe.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Great to have both John and Wayne Chen here this weekend. Canadian by nationality, but racing with Modern Motorsports of Hong Kong, and actually racing on a Hong Kong license as well. And I could tell from his overalls that he's done a bit of Porsche Carrera Cup racing in Asia too. So I'm not sure where John lives actually, but they're here with a great lineup on Modern Motorsports with 3 cars. They're all the Seat Leon TCR V3, but one is a DSG car, so the direct shift gearbox, and the other 2 being the sequential gearbox specification 216 and 218. But John down actually against 2 different cars, so has the chance of racing the 216 and the 218. And by the sounds of Diana's interview there, a real enthusiast for motorsport, just loving the fact that he's here at an iconic venue, Spa-Francorchamps. The good news is the 163 car has quickly been recovered. I imagine the weight of that tyre barrier, though, on the nose of the car will have been substantial, and I'm sure has done significant damage to the suspension, at the very least, of that Motorsport International car, front left corner of that number 163 car. And I just want to make sure we've got the driver of that car correct. It hasn't yet tumbled down the order an awful lot. Normally, that 163 car would be displayed on the screen as stopped there. We're just hearing from Diana that the sprinkles of rain have started again. Driver of the 163 now is a new name from my entry list. Joe arguably has a possibly more up-to-date one. Yeah, Gregory Pace is the driver of the 163 car. So they've done a little bit of shuffling around, I think, down at Motorsport International. And Vincent Deprier still one of their drivers, as is Paul Lejean as well. But they've switched out Maxime Potty and replaced with Greg Pace, and it was Pace at the wheel of the wheel of their car when it crashed in rather a big way at Radion Corner.
A good indication of track conditions at the moment is Diana's bobble hat, and she was telling us earlier. Diana, what's the update on the weather then? Are we starting again with a few raindrops? Did I hear? Something's firing up.
I'm now expecting Diana's bobble hat to have one of those pitot pipes on the top that, you know, registers.
It has started raining again, guys. It just spots the rain now. Most of the cars have gone back out after that code 60, but the rain is starting. I've ran back down here to the AMG test team number 84. They're back in the pit lane. They're clearly having a lot of other issues, although I'm looking and I'm pretty sure they're putting slicks on that car.
You're right. You are right.
Yep, I can see them now. They're putting slicks on the car. There was a lot of frantic activity, so I'm not sure what they were checking, unfortunately, but they're definitely putting slicks on. But the rain's just starting to come down again, so that's possibly an interesting move.
Maybe they have some super-duper satellite weather forecasting app or whatever on their computers that is telling them that this is just a little bit of a splash. But yeah, as I said, you know, you're going to put slicks on, and then no doubt within a matter of moments it'll start raining again. But how damp is the hat, Diana? How damp is the bobble hat?
It was drying out a little bit there, but now it's starting again, the rain. It's going to get all wet. So it's keeping my head dry though, which is good. Now I'm looking at this car. I think they're actually taking it back into the garage, the number 84. Yes, they are. They're retiring that car into the garage. I did wonder why they were putting the slicks on, because the rain was underway. So
are they retiring the car, Diana, or are they just going to push it back in?
They're pushing it back in. They're pushing it back into the garage, but there's no frantic activity. So that makes me think there's a bit more of an issue here. Yep, the bonnet, they've opened the bonnet up again, and they're having another look. So there's obviously some other issues going on here.
Clearly, they're not entirely sure what the issue is, or maybe there are numerous issues that they're trying to chase, and as soon as they solve one, then they realise something else is up with the car. That's the very nature of developing a brand new racing machine. So there are two Mercedes at the top of the timing screen now. Under this first Code 60 of the race, Adam Christodoulou leading the way, but restricted obviously to 60 kilometres per hour on his 28th lap of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit. And he's in front now of Chris Tiger, who's taken over the other Mercedes, the 211 car. There is the top of said bobble hat with a very concentrated Diana Binks. I love that. Very nice, yeah. Big fan.
I was just waiting outside the 84 to see if I could speak to anyone, but no, the activity is sort of not as frantic as it was, so that means it's not so good. There's a lot of shaking heads. They're checking the engine and looking underneath the car. They're having a chat to the driver, but they're not rushing. So I guess that's a bit more of a difficult one. Once I find out from the guys what's happening, obviously I shall let you know. I don't want to be too deep in there, as there's not anything they can tell me right this second. But you know, everyone's walking out. The conditions, the rain's sort of sprinkling down yet again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah, they're already 10 laps down off the lead lap, so they are losing time. I've got an interesting question from Right Turn Lover.
Just before you say that, the 163 Golf has reached the end of the lap on the back of a flatbed, by the way, so it's now back in the pits, the F1 pits, and the team can assess whether that car's fixable or not.
A couple of questions coming in on Twitter. Right Turn Lover is asking, basically, what happens when we stop the race, when the race is stopped in about an hour and a half's time. We're on 1 hour and 29 minutes remaining, and we will bring the first 3 hours of this race to a halt and then reconvene tomorrow morning. What can we do? Can we service the cars? No. Basically, the cars come to a halt on the start-finish straight, and park fermé conditions ensue. They're not allowed to touch the cars. The only time that the cars will be allowed to be looked at will be pre-race tomorrow, and purely for a warming-up process to be done on those cars. You can, of course, apply to the stewards and the officials if you have an issue with the car, and if you need anything repairing, and that's certainly that number 163 will need a heavy repair on that Volkswagen Golf TCR entry.
That's not going to buff out, is it?
No, that's not just a scratch. We haven't got enough gaffer tape in the box. Have we got enough gaffer tape for this? No, sorry, mate. No, we're going to have to really address that one. But yeah, things like that. If that car is still in the garage when we bring the first 3 hours to a halt, I believe that we will then have to take a penalty for fixing the car, for repairing the car during those parc fermé conditions. So at the moment, the 163 just being pulled off the flatbed car, and extensive damage to the front. Now it looks bodywork, it looks purely like bodywork, but it depends on where that energy from that impact has transferred through. And what you can find is frontal impact will manifest itself with a bent rear axle or something, because of the way that the energy has travelled through the car.
Yeah, and some of those things don't become immediately obvious until some of the body panels are stripped off the machine and they can have a look at the innards, the all-important way the car works, as opposed to the superficial damage. As you can see, G Pace on the side of the car. He was at the wheel at the time, joined by Paul Lejean and Vincent Deprier. So three-driver lineup at Motorsport International, and they are quick to work there. Let's get some reaction then on this incident with Diana Binks.
Not so good.
Your English sounds good. Yes, I have got Vincent with me. Vincent, you're just looking at the car. It's just come into the pit lane here. From what you've seen and what you've heard from the guys, what's the actual damage? Do you know?
I hope the principal parts of the car will be all right. We will see if we can drive back tomorrow, but I don't think it will be possible because a lot of pieces are damaged.
It looks it, doesn't it? I mean, the crew are there trying to just put that bonnet down, but clearly it's quite damaged underneath.
Yes, but they will put out the wheel and look if the main steering is okay. I think we will try to try tomorrow. Everything was okay today. We was 9th. We come from the 44th place to 9th place. Everything was perfect, and the wheel exploded in the base of Redillon.
So the driver could go nowhere.
That's no. Everything was okay. The driver was perfect, and only mislucked.
Sorry to hear that. I hope you get back out there into the race.
I hope so also. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's going to certainly grab your attention, isn't it? Because a moment into Eau Rouge, you don't forget immediately when it's not your fault, and presumably there was very little warning for the driver Gregory Pace. You know, tyre goes pop, goes bang, and then the car immediately swerves to the left and straight into the tyres.
And it's a very, very, very fast section indeed. It's a very steep hill, Eau Rouge. Again, any kind of TV cameras, if you haven't been to Spa and you've only seen it on TV, the TV cameras do not convey how steep Eau Rouge is. If it was a pathway, it would need steps, quite frankly, to walk up it. It is very steep. So he'll have scrubbed off a little bit of speed, Johnny, which is, of course, no consolation whatsoever at racing speed.
But when the car arrived back in the pits on a flatbed, the tyre was down, and I was trying to work out whether that was cause or effect. We now know the tyre was already deflated. It's a real compression point, but that's, I think, where the tyre is under a massive stress as you reach the bottom of Eau Rouge and hammer that curb on the left-hand side.
Another indication, I think, that the tyres are really being stressed in these drying conditions. Remember, that's a wet tyre on a drying track, so that'll have been under extreme stress and even overheating, which has caused that tyre failure.
Yes.
I just want to ask, I just want to include Callum Dog, who tweets any news on the 178. The only news that we had, Johnny, was we saw that car being pushed back on the track, and it's still circulating, and it's still in 25th. Now, Colin White is at the wheel of the car, and he was last in the pits. Hang on, where am I?
You're at Spa-Francorchamps.
I've lost him.
RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network, Joe Bradley. You're looking for car 178, which did have Patrick Matthiessen at the wheel when it had a moment at Legcombe corner. And you reckon Colin White may have taken car 178 over? This is what confused me. I thought I'd lined my eyeline had lined it up wrongly. Colin White in the car 178 is the second driver in that car. However, his stint time is showing as 1 hour and 41, which is not quite right, because that's from the start, isn't it? 1 hour and 41 minutes would, be about, yes, I think it is, because we started with 3 hours and 5 minutes to go. We've now got 1 hour and 23 minutes to go. And
but that's not the stint time, so Colin's just taken over that car.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I do. So
Colin's stint's only on maybe 11 minutes or so.
Unless the driver ID was incorrect from the start of the race, and it actually was Colin at the wheel, but we don't know.
He is in 25th place though, and still circulating.
And we now...
And I've got more.
I've got possible drama, just before you give us more. At Blanchimont corner, because there were yellow flags briefly held there, although my screen tells me they've been withdrawn. A look at the very standard looking, in terms of a livery, 161 car. That's the QSR Racing School entry from Belgium again. It's another BMW M235i Racing Cup car from Cup 1.
Championship leaders as well.
Okay. On 154 points, so they lead
100. They're on 78
points overall. Okay,
yeah, they're leading the team's championship, and QSR Racing School. That's the 154 entry. Now I'm sure if QSR, the 154 is
they're here with 2 cars.
Yes,
actually.
So that's maybe not the car. That is.
So it's not the car, but it is the team. But I assume, with there being a team's championship in the 24H TCE series, it's not teams per se, because it's each individual car up against each other, isn't it? So you could,
that's the way I would read it,
theoretically,
Johnny.
You could have both QSR Racing School teams on you know, like separated by a couple of points. I'm just wondering whether the other car is in the reckoning. It doesn't look like it is, but yeah, car 154 from QSR Racing School head the teams overall by a point from Monlin Competition, who've had a fabulous year with a couple of victories in the TCR class. And this is a team's overall championship, irrespective of class, isn't it?
I do think, though, Johnny, that it's the team of the 154 car.
That's what I'm saying.
That's how we distinguish the team's championship. It's not like a collective team.
So it wouldn't be like, for instance, Mercedes in Formula One, who are like accumulating teams. Yeah. Well, they're accumulating effectively a team's points tally from 2 cars. You can't do that in the Creventic promoted event. It's each car for itself, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. So it's the 154 QSR Racing School who are leading the team's championship.
But this is a team's championship irrespective of class. So
That's
you've got a Cup 1 team leading by a point over a TCR team, over a GT4 team. So it's a great spread within the teams overall.
Joshua Barrett, he's making a comment on Twitter, and I'll give you our Twitter handles if you want to get involved and ask Johnny and I, or indeed Diana, anything that you want to about this race. Joshua Barrett, further proof Mercedes want to win this. The number 2 and the number 211 taking the code 60 very seriously without stopping for checkups. Yeah, you know what? That's exactly the kind of body language I read into that as well, Josh. So thanks for that. Back down to the pits, though, Diana.
I'm with Patrick, the Colin White car. Colin's actually in the car, the 178 car. We were wondering what was happening because you seem to be losing a bit of power.
Yeah, every time I go on the straight, I try to shift up. I have to shift up early because if I go high on the reps, the car suddenly just die. So I have to shift early every time I go on the straight. So that was a big problem out there because every time I was close to someone, trying to catch up on them to overtake in the corner, I just die in the straight. So yeah.
So did Colin make the call to come in and so he could get behind the wheel?
Yeah, we tried to get the engine a bit higher in temperature to fix the problem, but right now it looks like it's fine now. So yeah.
And have you had any feedback from him over the intercom?
No, not yet. I'm still waiting for it.
But did you enjoy your stint out there on the track?
I really enjoyed the last bit of it. I did really find a bit part of the track where I could push the car really hard. It's my first time here. Yesterday I got 5 laps here, so it's a great track. I'm loving it, so can't wait to get out again.
That must be an incredible experience. We've talked to a number of drivers where it's their first time at Spa and they've only had limited time in the car, and then to jump in behind the wheel and 48 cars around you must be quite an overwhelming experience, is it?
It is. You really have to prepare a lot to do the best you can on this track here, because you only got 5 laps to learn the track, and I got 2 laps practice, and then I just suddenly was in the qualifying. So yeah. But yeah, it's a great track, learning every lap, so yeah.
Well, the car's making progress, Colin's behind the wheel, still a lot of time to go. No doubt we'll catch up with you again a bit later.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just 19 years old, Patrick Mathieson from Denmark, and sharing as part of a 2-driver lineup at CWS with Colin White, and clearly timeservice.nl, who look after the live timing for the 24H series, are listening to RS1 this weekend because they've corrected the time for Colin White. He's been in the car for 13 minutes as opposed to 1 hour and 40. That was Patrick's time. Patrick's probably in there for probably about 90 minutes, and Colin's taken over for the second half of today's portion of the race. Very squirrely entrance to Les Combes corner there for the Duo Racing BMW. That, on the other hand, is the 118 car, another Beamer, and the 118 car is the JR Motorsport E46 Coupe. So how are JR Motorsport doing now? The 118 car is running 9th, and it has Nick Geelan currently at the wheel, sharing with Marco Poland, who's done the lion's share of today's race, but he's now handed over to co-driver Nick, and Vord Slois being kept back till tomorrow's action.
So with Christodoulou remaining at the wheel of the number 2 Mercedes AMG GT, and we see that he now has a lead of over 40 seconds, and the second place car is now the 303 Rick Broik has driven Red Camel's Jordan Seat. First in class, first in the TCR class. And in third place, the 211 Mercedes. Now resuming in that third place. That car not quite having the same pace as the Christodoulou, the Black Falcon car, the Uwe Olsen team running the 211. And it's now got Chris Tiger from the USA at the wheel of that car. And second in class. Fourth in the race so far is the 119 Seat Leon of LMS Racing. And in fifth place, the Cano Ramirez driven, and a change there just as I speak, 221 is the KTM. Early leader now at the wheel of the 221. I see that we've now got in the form of Aika Angamar now at the wheel of the RTR Project's KTM Expo. Currently third in SP3, fifth overall. And I didn't see, Johnny, how the KTM actually lost the lead through that pit stop phase in code 60. Cano Ramirez is in the Mondial competition Seat now in sixth, having just dropped a place to the Crossbow, or the Expo. So have we decided whether we call that Crossbow or Expo?
Crossbow.
It is Crossbow, not Expo.
Right. It's definitely Crossbow, but the strange thing is that crossbows can now be run in the VLN Championship on the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and they run in Cup X. So you have Cup X for the crossbow. Confusing or what? Yellow flags again at this time turn 3, which is Radeon. So I'm slightly concerned that we may have another car off at a very fast part of the circuit, although the yellows are quickly withdrawn again. So
yeah, that may have been a little bit of
just a slide off track
spinner or something, Johnny, a spinner. And then because at the time our circuit CCTV had just scanned across the top of Radeon and there was nothing present or nothing apparent, so thankfully the yellow flags have been retained and brought back in. I was about to ask you, didn't you have a visit to the KTM factory where the crossbows were made?
We certainly tried to have a visit to the crossbow factory. We went to a place in Graz, and I always get confused as to where the bikes are made and where the crossbows are made. But yes, we did visit the factory. Sadly, it was on one of their days off, effectively, when all the staff weren't working. The turnout of KTMs is so impressive. They're getting through a number of units per year. I don't have the figures in front of me, sadly, but yeah, I don't think it's enough necessarily to have a workforce employed 365 days a year, and we got there when they weren't in action. But yes, the KTM bikes are made in Mantigofen in Austria, but there's a separate factory for where the crossbow is built in Graz. Another update from Diana Binks in the pit lane.
Yes, earlier the 164, the Bastuk Motorsport car, went off and retired the Kia into the garage. You can probably just see us behind. I think the engine's come out. Johannes is the chief engineer here. Tell us what's happening.
Yes, sadly we have an engine failure at this moment, and not happened what's the problem exactly. So, but we will fix the problem. We will change the engine for sure, and tomorrow morning we are back definitely in the race.
What was the feedback from the driver as you discovered that you had an issue?
Yeah, the driver feedback is quite difficult at the racetrack. It's quite bad, but the feedback was good. We had a good start in the race and was in first position in our class, so it was good. But yeah.
These things happen, don't they? They're very frustrating and a long race to go. Do you think you'll get back out this afternoon, or will it be really tomorrow morning now by the time they finish changing that engine?
Yeah, for sure tomorrow morning, for sure we are back. The guys are working hard, so maybe at the afternoon we will do a check with the new engine, but tomorrow morning for sure we are back.
Okay, thanks for updating us.
Thanks, Diana. And back in the race, and a message from, or a question indeed, from Miggins Motorsport, a bit of a UK-themed request here, just asking how the Honda UK team, that's the Synchro Motorsport team, car 176, Martin Byford started the car, and Martin Byford remains in the car, currently in 15th overall, and we're leading the A3 class but have just lost the lead of the class, and I'm trying to fathom out why. They've just lost the lead of the class to the car 132. That's the German wheels BMW M3, now moving into the lead of the A3 class, but only 3 seconds is the gap. There's certainly 3 seconds on the road, but in between the BMW of the German wheels team and the Synchro Motorsport Honda is the Holmgard Motorsport Seat Leon, just getting in the way there. So Martin Byford just putting in his fastest lap of the race so far with a 2:59. So the track beginning to come to people, and I noticed, Johnny, back down in the pits as Rick Breukers exits the 303. Second place, Red Camel's Jordan Seat Leon. He steps out of the car and steps aside as slick tyres, untreaded slick tyres, go on that TCR Seat, and it wheel spins its way out, and it will be making its way along the pit lane and down the other side into the endurance pits, where it will enter the fuel station. So certainly the first of the cars that I've become aware of actually going on to slick. So we'll monitor the lap times from that car. Best lap of a 2 minutes 46.2 for that Rick Breukers driven car. Not sure which of the drivers got into the 303, but we'll clarify that.
There's only him and Evo. So
there's only two of them sharing the car.
Yeah.
All right, so Dad's in the car now.
On slick tyres.
On slick tyres.
There you go, mate. Yeah, you'll be fine. You've been racing far longer than I have, says Rick. After a cracking stint, in fairness. He started the race in second. He's finished his stint still in second place, but now he's handed it over to Ivo Breukers to see what this Spa track is like on brand new slick Hankooks.
You know what, Johnny? We have witnessed firsthand the evolution of that young man as a racing driver. And he debuted at Le Mans this year, remember, in the LMP2 class. It was in the Team Bratislava car, and you know, I'm hoping, I don't wish to be disrespectful here, but not a top-level LMP2 team. Them finding their feet as well and acquitting himself very well at that level. He's been winning Lamborghini races in Asia.
Hi, Joe.
And he was out in the prototype race yesterday and this morning, being the fastest car out there, and took wins in both of those events. And he really, when he's at the wheel of that car, he's the guy yesterday in qualifying who put that Seat on the front row of the grid, fastest in the TCR class by a mile over the other TCR runners. And you just know that Rick Breukers, as a driver, has got a very long and very good career in prospect ahead of him. I did hear the dulcet tones of Diana Binkso. Di?
You did. I'm sorry, I was rudely interrupting you there, but I've come down to Synchro Motorsports, the 176 that you were talking about. Alan James is here waiting to get in. Martin Byford, as you know, is still behind the wheel. Alan, how are things going? You were sort of running in the lead, and it seems like you've just lost it. Do you know why?
We think it's just tyres. At the moment, we're still on wets. It looks like some are making a risk and change. I'm just looking at the BMW in our class to see what he's doing. But Martin's got a lot of experience out there, so we're waiting on him to feed that back to us. But it's raining and it stops, and then we're trying to find the dry line or the wet line, depending on what the weather's doing. So at the moment, we're okay. We're happy. We think we've got the pace, and we think, you know, long term, we're okay. I'm just a little bit nervous now going out. I've done 3 laps ever here, so I've never been here before this weekend. So to jump straight into the race for maybe 2 hours now at the end, I'll take, is a little bit nerve-wracking now.
I can imagine, but as you say, Martin is so experienced, you're obviously relying very much on his feedback when the right time is for you to get behind the wheel.
Yeah, definitely. Martin and Dan Wheeler with us. Dan's, you know, raced here a lot of times. He's won a lot here as well, so both of those experiences have been great to talk to and listen to. But yeah, when it's me out there, it's a bit of them. But no, Martin's, the feedback we're getting from him, the report, he's talking corner to corner to me on the radio here. So at least then we can get some good feedback from him before I jump in.
Well, just looking at the cars that are still coming into the pits behind us here, obviously our viewers can't see that. They're definitely still on wet. So we haven't seen anyone yet that's jumped to slicks, because the weather, as soon as it stops for 5 seconds, it's back again.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Alan, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to stop you. You've got to go, you're getting in the car, guys. He's just been summoned by Dan Wheeler there, so they're going to make the change. Martin Byford, I'll be coming back in just a few minutes' time.
Diana Binks there taking over the role of team manager and ordering Alan James into the car. Diana, I can inform you that while you were talking to Alan James, we did have the 303, the Red Camels Jordan Seat, out of the pit lane, having just taken on slicks. And I suspect also that the Zest Racecar Engineering Seat Leon was in 12th place. Davidovsky at the wheel of that car, and that is Victor Davidovsky, going straight on at the source, quite harmlessly, didn't contact anything, but that kind of lends itself to maybe he is also out on slicks and finding the track still a bit treacherous on those untreaded tyres.
Joe, because even down here in the pit lane, I know you can't probably see it on the screen there, but it is spitting with rain again. I mean, my hat's getting wet, would you believe? And as you can see, the cars are coming in, and I you know, it's debatable whether they really should be on slicks, but I guess that's why you're finding there's some issues.
The 217 again, as you spoke there, the 217 Seat straight on at La Source. Just trying to find 217 on our timing screens. He didn't really lose much time, just basically went off track and then drove straight back on.
Another car from Hong Kong. It's one of the modern motorsports, right, isn't it?
Diana's bobblehead is tantamount to seaweed, Johnny.
Can we call it Binksy's bobble?
Binksy's bobble is tantamount.
So.
Binksy's bobblehead, right. And I think it needs a Twitter handle as well. Somebody will create that.
I should have brought my other one. It's Cerise Pink for tomorrow, but you know, I'll do that next time.
Well, maybe we'll leave that for the races that we go into night. Go into darkness. That'll be happy. There we can see the level. No, not you, Diana. Stay where you are. We're looking at your bobble, Binksy's bobble, Binksy's bobble there, showing us.
I was trying to get out of the way because I think the synchro car's about to come into the pits, but he's not behind us yet.
Doesn't look too bad, Diana. Not any droplets forming on your bobble there.
Okay, I confess, I'm trying to keep out of the rain.
This Synchro Motorsport team, by the way, for those not in the know, based in Swindon, exactly where the Honda factory is. I think a lot of the team that come and prepare the Synchro Honda are actually guys from the factory, aren't they?
That's correct, yes.
And Alan James, who we just heard from, Welsh, as you could probably hear from his accent, but team principal of Synchro, so now living in Swindon and working in Swindon. And he's raced in the 2016 TCE series and back for more this year as well.
Now there was rumour, Johnny, call it a little bit of gossip if you like, that that Synchro Motorsport Honda was made out of parts that were smuggled out of the Honda factory out the back door on a Friday afternoon. It's completely untrue. Honda are completely behind these employees who do work full-time on the production line of the Honda factory, and the 24H series, the quarter race in the United States, which we'll talk a little bit about later on, which is taking place in the middle of November, we see two of a similar kind of Honda team being put together by Honda Canada. And I can tell you that the tyres that have come off that Synchro Honda are absolutely bald. That would not pass a police officer's road test inspection. It will be 3 points for that tyre, Mr. Byford. And so they're clear indication of what that drying track is doing to those Hankook treaded tyres. Now, if Binksy's bobble is still there, Diana, did that Synchro Honda take on slicks?
You might want to have a look at
No, it didn't. No, you didn't take on slicks, did you?
No, we went back to wets, but that one, I think we've had our money out of that one.
Yeah, well, Joe was just saying up in the commentary box, you've worn those tyres out, they wouldn't pass the police inspection.
No, not at all. It's a really tough call, you know, right on time where we want to pit. It's just so difficult to know what the weather's going to do. Right now, it's still wet. If it doesn't rain, in 10 minutes it's going to be slick. So, I don't know, you roll the dice and we go wets.
Well, obviously, I just chatted to Alan before he jumped in. Well, you were in the car and on the way in, and we had to stop our interview very quickly because he got a call to jump in the car. But how did you feel that those first opening laps went?
Yeah, really good. I promised myself to stay out of trouble on the first lap. We were smack bang in the middle of the field, like 25th on the grid. So the first lap was just about stay out of trouble, keep it clean, and then get on with it. And actually, I was able to pick a couple of cars off in the first couple of laps. And some of the rear-wheel drive cars certainly take a bit longer to get up to speed, I think. So I kind of made hay while I had the opportunity to. And yeah, I know the BMW, the Cox BMW was coming back at us. So the majority of that stint was spent looking in the mirrors, trying to gauge the gap and trying to keep him at bay. But,
so a lot going on. I've got to say though, Martin, I'm quite impressed because Alan told us that you were talking him around corners while you were out there racing. So we reckon that we could put a radio mic into your car and you could give us a little chat while you're racing. What do you think?
I could do that.
Ah, did you hear that, guys? He said he could do it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, it's not for that, definitely.
You won't pay for it.
Yeah, it's not like Byford to shy away from attention, is it, eh?
No, he said he's happy to do that. But where we are at this moment, are you happy with where you're running?
Yeah, fuel usage is good. We can get to the end of the 2-hour stint on driver time. It's all about tyres at the moment. The car feels fantastic. It's running like clockwork, touch wood. So yeah, it's 2 hours down. It's early doors, isn't it?
Thanks for talking to us as soon as you got out of the car. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We'll get in touch with Flip, our sound engineer for this weekend. I'm sure that will cause him suitable nightmares to try and set that up. But Byford looks well up for it, doesn't he?
I'm sure he'd relish that challenge. Yeah, Martin is just the man to do that as well. And you can tell you know what, I worked with Martin when I ran a college race team, and I would tell the students who effectively were my pit crew that, you know, with Byford in the car, that car is going as fast as it possibly can. It cannot go any faster with any other human being in it. It's going as optimum speed. And you know what? He certainly got those tyres optimised, didn't he? He absolutely wore them right down. And the good news is that the tyres lasted just on the edge of that driver stint for that team, and that worked out very well, because I'm not sure that tyre would have done many more laps. We've had a slowing car 235, Johnny, while we were talking to Diana. The car came to a halt on the Kemmel Straight.
Yeah.
It looked to me as though the driver had done a Control-Alt-Delete reset and then got re-going. So maybe another limp mode issue with the BMW ECU this time. And I think I just saw the Kinetic Racing Seat off the track and just rejoining. So as we get towards a transitional stage of track conditions here at Spa-Francorchamps, it becomes ever trickier for the drivers out on the circuit.
Yeah, that's the Luxembourgish entry. The Duo Racing Cup 1 BMW M235i, which ground to a halt at the end of the Kemmel Straight, but is now on the move again, I'm pleased to say. Meanwhile, car heading through. Now this is the Spanish lineup, 3 Spaniards and a Belgian for the 107, the Monlau Competition car, isn't it? Cano Ramirez, as you say, at the wheel of the 5th placed car. And these guys riding high in the championship as well, just a point off the QSR Racing School BMW. 2 wins already under their belt in a 5-race series for 2017.
And you know something else about the driver that we are in car on the live stream with, Albo Cano Ramirez, is also a student of engineering and has just gotten her degree in motorsport-related engineering at Oxford Brookes. So congratulations to her. So that engineering degree will be coming in very handy here as she makes decisions on what tyres to choose next. Back down to the pits, though, is Binksy's bobble hat. Diana?
I'm with Adam Christodoulou, Brack Falcon Racing, just jumped out of the car. You've been there from the start. I noticed obviously slicks on that car when you jumped out. I assume you changed those during the Code 60?
Yeah, so it fell right in our window, which worked out really nice. I'd just gone past the 3rd sector, so we made the decision to come in, put the slicks on, and we knew it was going to be tough for the first few laps, and so at least having the Code 60 meant I was able to brake and get a bit of weaving in and not lose any time to the cars in front, so the strategy worked quite nice with that. But just completed my 2 hours. Saud's just jumped in, and it looks like it's starting to sprinkle a little bit more again, so...
Well, to be honest, even though you were out on slicks, it was still raining. We were sort of, you know, trying to see who was changing as drivers came in, but we couldn't see too many going out on the slick.
It's one of them, it's risk versus reward, and of course around here we're having to overtake a lot off the dry line, so of course it's very easy to make a mistake, as we've already seen in the race. I think 1 or 2 of the cars are already out now, and so we've got to make sure we obviously get to the end of the 3 hours and have a good run tomorrow.
So you can't really stop, can you? It's all about managing your tyres, your fuel, and then those around you.
Yeah, and of course with the Code 60 rules, only being able to fill up half of the tank, of course that also creates extra at work trying to figure out what the strategy is going to be. And so, yeah, it definitely spices it up. It doesn't make it easy, but it's the same for everyone.
So far, so good?
Yeah, definitely. So the car feels great, and the thing is we just need to get as much mileage on this car as possible to, well, see how it reacts to these kind of conditions.
Anything that you found in the sort of time that you've been in it?
Pardon?
Anything you've found that's not working in the time that you've had to sort of manage it along?
Apart from I forgot to plug my drink system in, that's the only thing.
So you need a drink now?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Adam, thanks ever so much.
Cheers.
Luckily for Mr. Christodoulou, it's not 30 degrees ambient.
No.
I'm sure, though, it's pretty hot in the cockpit of that car when you're muscling it around in these ever-changing conditions with your eyes out on stalks, feeling every single contour of the slippery racetrack, especially him sneaking out on slicks, Johnny, in front of us in that Code 60. It would have been interesting to monitor his lap times, his last lap time, or sorry, the current driver of that car now on its outlap, and it's Saud Al Faisal taking over the number 2 Mercedes. It's dropping down to 3rd as it cycles through the pit stop phase. Ahead of him, though, in 2nd place overall, the number 119, that's the 119 LMS Racing, powered by Bas Kouten Seat. And currently at the wheel of that car is Ollie Kangas, the Finnish driver. And currently also, not just 2nd overall, but 1st in the TCR class so far. Leader, though, is back into the lead, is the number 221. Angamar is the driver of the RTR Project's KTM Crossbow. 39 laps completed and a 10-second lead over the 2nd place car. And I know we promised you an hourly update, but there was so much happened on track at the last top of the hour that we completely passed it by. Well, we're about 5 minutes away from the top of the hour, coming up to 5 p.m. local time, 4 p.m. in the UK, and we'll give you a rundown of our field and our class rundowns also, and a little bit of time before we do that, with just under the hour now, Johnny, before we go to the break, where the cars will be brought to a halt and placed into parc fermé conditions, having completed the first 3 hours or so of the 12 hours of Spa, and that is looming ever closer.
Yeah, certainly is. I've been impressed with the LMS Racing Seat so far, though, powered by Bas Kouten, and Ollie Kangas currently driving that, having taken over from Antti Burri. We're not going to see Kari-Pekka Laukkanen probably until tomorrow now, but the Finnish trio for the LMS Racing squad from Finland and powered by Bas Kouten, Dutchman. Baz here with
very experienced race team,
and here with lots of cars, in fairness, in various different ways to kind of deem it, if you like. Bas Kouten Racing, powered by Kawasaki, is one of them. The NKPP Seat, that kind of multicoloured machine, that's a Bas Kouten racing car as well. So although they kind of have a more obvious team name, scratch beneath the surface, and it's probably Baz's team.
It is, yeah.
Looking after things.
Yeah.
So,
and he's a very hands-on team principal, is Baz. He's you know, race mechanic number 1 and engineer, and very hands-on. He'll be the man with his sleeves rolled up at the times of adversity when we need to get our hands dirty.
That car 119, 2nd on the road, then the 211 Mercedes AMG from Uwe Alten's outfit, with Chris Tiger, the American driver, now piloting that, having taken over from Fabian Hamprecht. Lots of opposite lot required for the 217 Modena Motorsports Seat, just working its way out of the bus stop chicane, and behind it is the Dan Agro Racing Clio, another car that's carrying one of our cameras on the live stream, and good to get some action from inside that little A2 car, driven by 3 Danish drivers. We can get another update now from Diana Binks, who's in the pit lane.
I'm with Peter Cake, Head Speed Racing. Peter, you were starting the race today. You told me earlier you were just a little bit apprehensive. You hadn't had many miles under your belt for this one, but how did it go?
Well, much better than expected. After one lap, it was clear I was going to let the guys in front just sort themselves out. get used to the car. Took me a couple of laps to find my way a little bit. Closed on them and picked up, I think we came in P4 after starting P9, so I'm happy with that. In the TCR class, it's really competitive. Cars are pretty much on a knife edge all the time because the grip was very, very low. Bit of a dry line, but the problem is down the straights, there's no dry line, so your tyres just get cold again. But yeah, I think as you saw with the Golf went off at Eau Rouge, it was treacherous. You had a margin of error that was very small, so very pleased to bring it back. And James is now out and lapping well, so yeah, should be a good result.
How difficult was it though, managing the tyres? As you said, it was difficult to get heat in them, and most people that have gone out on wets, by the time they come back, they look like they've been on slicks.
They do indeed. I mean, you know, we were lucky in that there was a code 60 about halfway through, gave us a chance to cool everything down. Without that, I think they would have looked even worse. We're in the dark a little bit with the wets because we haven't run the car in the wet. The team hasn't had that experience, so we weren't sure how well they'd last. And I think the answer is behind me. They're probably the next slicks we'll use.
Did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, of course. Fantastic, mega, really good.
All right, thanks, Peter. I'm just going to go off for a little bit, guys. I hope you don't mind, but we're going to have a cup of tea.
I do not blame you, Diana. That's exactly what I was about to mention. I think Peter's deserved his cup of Tregothian tea, and we've just maybe due our second cup there. Peter Cade, a familiar driver you'd saw there with his Aston Martin overalls on. He's more familiar to maybe listeners on RadioLeMans.com and RS1. The RS1 network as driving an Aston Martin, familiar name at the Nürburgring 24 Hours. Currently in the RS3 Audi here this weekend. He will be back in an Aston Martin at our 24H Series race at Quarter, and he'll be sharing the car with none other than Andy Palmer, the CEO of Aston Martin, Paul Hollywood, the famous TV baker, and a certain up-and-coming young driver, one John Hindhoff.
I think I've heard of him.
That name rings a bell, and I don't know why. I'm going to have to maybe Google it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we look forward to seeing Peter back in the Aston at Quarter. But right now, Peter getting to grips with the front-wheel drive characteristics of that Audi RS3. Not an unfamiliar characteristic for Peter, as he once was in the B class of British touring cars back in the early 2000s.
Production class, yes.
Production classes, that's what we called it. So he's re-familiarising himself and having a bit of a whale of a time. So as Diana Binks slinks to the back of the Cadspeed garage to take on some of Peter's English-grown tea, grown in Cornwall, is it?
In Truro, just east of
Truro,
Truro,
yeah.
Truro, yeah. Tregothian tea, which is very, very tasty if you've not had the chance to sample it.
We're on the top of the hour, Johnny. Do you want to give us a rundown? I'll go and pour us another cup of Tregothian tea.
What a fabulous idea,
yes.
Joe. Yeah, so we'll hear from Bradders again in a second, but this is the order then with only now 49 minutes to go. We've really rattled through the opening 2 and a bit hours. Remember, we started as we've reached 5 o'clock local time with 3 hours and 5 minutes on the clock for the first part of the Spa 12 hours. Here on RS1, part of the Radio Show Limited network. It's Eike Angermeyer then that leads the way for RTR Projects and their KTM Crossbow. The car started by Eric Yanis and now being piloted by the Austrian driver. So that car is best placed in SP3. I have to say, the mixture between GT4 and TCR cars in that top 10 is fantastic. If I read the class column to you, it reads GT4, TCR, GT4, TCR, GT4, TCR. You get the idea. You get the pattern. And this is fantastic bit of overlapping, effectively, between the road-based cars and the less sporty cars, you could argue, although they do offer quite a lot of downforce, and then the true GT4 cars. So it's the KTM that leads the way from a TCR car now driven by Ollie Kangas. That's the LMS Racing, powered by Baz Kooten, entered Seat Leon TCR. That car is second and best placed in the TCR division. The 211 car is third. And that's another Mercedes. Well, that's the best placed of the Mercedes AMG GT4s, driven by Chris Tiger, and the car that was started by Fabian Hamprecht. Then the 107 car. So this must be a TCR machine. It is from Monlau Competition, and that car driven by we put Alba Cano Ramirez in the car, didn't we? After an opening stint from Jose Manuel Perez A-Kart. There are 2 other drivers to come, including Jürgen Smet sometime tomorrow. That car is 4th. 5th on the road is the 118 JR Motorsport BMW E46, now driven by Nick Gielen and started by Marco Poland. And 5th position is the Bas Kooten Racing, powered by Kawasaki Seat, so another TCR car, and it is Jan Sorensen currently at the wheel of car 155. 7th position, car number 2, is another Mercedes AMG, this time the Black Falcon example, and Saud Al Faisal, the Saudi Arabian driver, is currently driving that, number 2, 7th place. 8th position is the 102 car, that's the Home Guard Motorsport Seat. They're racing a TCR car again from Denmark, and at the wheel of that car is Wolfgang Haug, the German. So that's 8th place. 9th position is Ivo Breukers in a car that was sent out on slicks, and I'm not sure whether the Red Camel car has switched back to wet tyres. I would assume it has, only because I'd expect it to have been off the track a little bit more if it wasn't now back on wet Hankooks. But anyway, Ivo Breukers took that car over from son Rick, and in fact there it is at Les Combes corner. A little bit of a wiggle actually. It's the bright orange car reaches the highest part of the circuit. So maybe Ivo is still making do with the slick tyres. 10th position is the 178 car. That's Colin White driving the CWS Ginetta G55, also from the GT4 category. And that is your top 10. As far as the classes are concerned, Class A3 is headed by the RKC stroke TGM Honda FD2. And at the wheel of that class-leading car, Ricky Kuma in that Honda from Class A3. Second position in A3 is number 187, and that's a BMW M3 in Class A3, sported by United Project Motorsport, another team from Denmark. And third position in Class A3 is the Synchro Motorsport Honda, with now Alan James at the wheel. We heard from Alan, of course, moments before he was put in that car and strapped on board. Cup 1 is headed by James Colburn now, man you may well know from Renault Clio Racing in the UK. 152 being driven by James. It's a BMW M235i, as you would expect, being a Cup 1 car, and that's the Sorg Rennsport entered machine. Second in Cup 1 is the number 192 car of JJ Motorsport, and third in Cup 1 is 162, which is the Gamses Motorsport BMW. Other classes, A2 is headed by 191, that's the Heli Racing BMW 120D. We don't have any specific diesel classes in this year's Spa 12 Hours, so if you have got a diesel car, Creventic will find a home for it, and they put the Heli Racing entry into A2, and that's currently the best of the A2 machines, down in 34th position. Second in A2 is car 52, the Team Sally Racing Renault Clio, and third of the A2 runners is... Ooh, now, hang on a minute. Third of the A2 runners is... Or have I misidentified some of these cars? No, we were doing A3, weren't we? We did A3. A2, as I say, Heli Racing from Team Sally Racing. Yes, we got that bit right. And third in A2 is HTM Racing with their Volkswagen Golf. Sorry, lost the plot there briefly. But that's the 222 car that is currently third in Class A2 from the Netherlands. And there's a car slow on the main straight, number 239, one of the Ginettas. 239 is the entry from Perfection Racing Europe, and that car having to head off onto the grass. So this is the main straight between the bus stop chicane and La Source corner, and the black and white Ginetta G55 has had to pull off circuit with double waved yellows currently covering car 239, which is being driven by Michael Klosterman. Another two-driver lineup, by the way. It's Michael and Klaus Klosterman. And this car, I seem to remember, had dramas yesterday in either free practice or qualifying. We ran free practice and quali as a combined session yesterday. It was kind of a 40-minute plus a 20-minute without an interval. And now Michael Klosterman has a real job on his hands to get the car moving again on what is very sodden turf there to driver's left just before La Source. He's done a tremendous job to get the car back onto track. Clearly, there was a master reset done on board that car. It came to a halt. He went through the rigmarole of turning the engine off, turning everything off and restarting it. And it seems, fingers crossed, to have done the trick, because Michael Klosterman is back on the move again. Eike Angermeyer, though, leading the way after 44 laps, has crossed the line. Double-waved yellows warning everybody about the stricken car briefly, but they have now been withdrawn. And Ollie Kangas will be the next car to work his way through, thread his way through the bus stop chicane and come across the line very shortly indeed. But I was commenting, Joe, about this wonderful spread of GT4 and TCR cars in that top 10. We might have 5 of each now. No, it's 6 versus 4. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 TCRs. It is. It's a 50-50 split between the two classes.
Yeah, even though I was taking my time making you a lovely pot of Tregothnan tea, Johnny, which is perhaps an opportunity now for you to get a taste of that.
Thank you.
I did hear your description with regards to how the classes have come together, and even though we've got completely different ways of building a race car and different classes of cars, they are coming together on a competitive level. Rotation tweets, tell us more. Are other teas available? Not in this booth, not at this track, because Peter Kidd, who is the main distributor of the English-made Tregothnan tea, has supplied us with a lovely, some lovely examples of the tea. And now and again I will go quiet, and if I do go quiet, you'll know I'm off boiling the kettle for another pot.
I think they might do different flavours.
Yeah, they do.
We maybe need to interview Peter about the various varieties of Tregothnan tea.
Yeah, I think Diana's already on it, mate. She's still in the back of the garage, mate. I'm looking forward to Quarter, because in the Aston Martin with Peter is Paul Hollywood,
yes,
who's the master baker. So it's going to be tea and cake in that garage. You know where to find me at Quarter, mate.
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. He makes a mean Victoria sponge.
Does he?
Does Paul Hollywood, yes. I mean, controversial in the sense that
I'm looking forward to that.
He changed channels, didn't he, with Great British Bake Off? It's no longer on the channel it used to be.
Yes.
However,
I know. I
mean, Paul Hollywood is a big motorsport fan. He's raced at Le Mans before, not in the main race, but in an Aston Martin race.
I've got to say, the Great British Bake Off is certainly been on my TV, but I've never seen it. My Sam is a big fan, and she sits with him on 2 or 3 back-to-back. More problems for the 84 Mercedes. Now, this is the car that started the race with Bernd Schneider at the wheel. It's now got Vebaan, J. Vebaan, Johan, isn't it? Jörg Vebaan, of course. And he's had a spin. He's had a bit of a harmless spin at Le Combe, end of the Kemmel Straight, and as he's turned in, the car has swapped ends, and he was basically pointing in the wrong direction at the apex, or on the outside of the first part of the Le Combe complex of right, left, right turns. He's rejoined, he's pulled the car back on the track, and he's rejoining, but that car is well out of contention now. It's down in 45th place overall. It's completed 32 laps in difference to 45 laps completed by the leaders. So that car did have problems. It lost an auxiliary drive belt, and then whilst the car was being in, now remember, this Mercedes team, this is the it's
HTP
not the black, it's
car.
the
HTP.
HTP, yeah, it's the HTP. Ooh, problems at campus there. Hang on, I'll finish my thought, and then we'll. Too much happening, Johnny.
I know.
I'll finish my thought.
I'm
now,
just enjoying the tea.
Remember, you do that. Remember that all 3 Mercedes AMG. They call themselves the test teams. We've got Black Falkland, HTP, and Uwe Olsen's team here testing this GT4 spec Mercedes AMG GT, but testing in a race environment. And one of the cars is actually in the top 3 at the moment. So not just a test in the sense of going round and testing things, actually competing as we do. Now then, the reason why I lost my train of thought, Johnny, is because we've got a car. It looks like we've got a car in the gravel trap on the outside of campus, and we have got a code 60 because of that. And whilst we saw that, we were in car with the 216 Seat, and that car was heading straight towards it across the gravel and was managed to just stop its progress and turn right into Stavolo.
And the car that's in the gravel is 218.
Oh, that would have been a team coming
together.
together.
Modena Motorsports. The
Yes.
team we were on board with, 216, Modena Motorsports.
Yes.
So that could have been truly disastrous for the Hong Kong outfit, who have turned up with 3 cars here this weekend. This is the 218 car then that needs recovering quite clearly. It's quite a shallow gravel trap actually down at Campus Corner. By shallow, I don't mean it's like an inch deep. It's quite deep.
It's not emotionally shallow.
But it doesn't run very far until you've got a tyre wall down there.
Quite wide.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but rather than being deep, it's it doesn't take very long before you find the tyre wall the other side. Now, thankfully, the car's rotated in the gravel and gone backwards towards the tyre barrier. I don't think it's connected with the tyres, but it's a tight corner at Campus, actually.
Yes.
You've got concrete wall right up to driver's right with the educational establishment just on the inside, the apex of that bend, effectively. I showed you a photograph of that this morning. And I think there's some kind of medical centre down there, isn't there? Or
Well, I was part of a race team here 10 years ago, and one of my drivers got taken away for a drug and urine test.
Yes.
And they were taken all the way from the paddock here behind the pits, all the way to the inside of Campus Corner, where the medical centre was. I'm not sure why they've housed the medical centre there, but it was quite a little car journey. He was taken away by the officials, and we had to go and collect him. Certainly couldn't allow him to walk back. Would have took about half an hour.
Yes, there is a sort of back entrance and exit route as well for the Spa track in that portion of the circuit. And a little bit after that, as you work your way through Stavolo Corner and through Curve Paul Frere, long lingering right-hander, if the drivers had an opportunity to look right, they would see the kart track that's here at Spa, and that runs seemingly day and night. I remember being here a couple of weekends ago and staying till about 10 o'clock on the Sunday night, and there was just about the best kart race I've ever watched in my life, with about, I'm not kidding, about probably 35, 40 karts hammering around there. And it's been a long time since I've seen karting done that competitively, where you had probably 15 for the lead and so close to one another, chopping and changing positions every single lap.
You just happened upon that, did you?
I actually did. I mean, they had some time to kill on the Sunday night after the European Le Mans Series race. Decided to walk the track, which seemed a good idea in the daylight. Part way round, it was dark, but the track is the kart track, flood lit, and what an atmosphere! I was standing there with my mouth open, thinking, how on earth are these guys getting through the chicane? There was a tight chicane set up with tyre bales, and to see karts arriving there, sometimes 3 abreast, and they all managed to get through. And the other thing I loved was there's a main straight on that kart track, and all the guys were, when they got to the straight, they would lean forward in their seats.
Aerodynamics.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah.
It's all about, like you would be in a bike race, going downhill, making sure, you see it in the Tour de France, don't you? The rider will get into an aerodynamic shape to make the bike and the person go through the air that much more efficiently.
It works.
Do exactly the same on a car.
It works.
I've never seen that before.
It works, Johnny. And I was in a qualifying session in a kart, and my pit board said I needed a 10th, and so I leant forward, and I got 2 tenths. It does work. It's bizarre.
We're back to green, by the way.
You are back to green. Yes, we digress. We're back to green. Jimmy Peters-Ennis reminds me that in the drug and urine test that I was part of here, it wasn't Alan Taylor. It was Keith Izzat. Jimmy, your memory fades better than mine, or faster than mine. Good to hear that Jimmy Peters-Ennis is another one of our regular listeners and viewers. He's with us, and he will be until the finish, which is the finish of, I should say, of this first 3-hour segment of this race, and we are 33.5 minutes away from that, Johnny. So we're getting towards the important part of this segment of the race, the important part being staying on that lead lap within your class. You do not want to go a lap down when you restart tomorrow.
Yeah, and bear in mind that the TCR leader is circulating about 3/4 of a minute behind the GT4 leader, the SP3 leader as it's called in this version of endurance racing. Remember, GT4 is kind of known as different things depending on what championship we're watching. In the VLN, it's known as SP10. In the Creventic promoted races, it's known as SP3, rather confusingly, because in VLN, SP3 is somewhere you find rather smaller touring cars, but it's GT4 anyway in Creventic. And the 259 car is a GT4 machine. That's the Munkhoff Racing BMW M4. Again, an understated livery. I quite like the black roof on that, the Munkhoff backing. And just the two drivers, the two Dutchmen, Erik Fontaine-Munkhoff and Henry Zumpring, are the two drivers. And who's just brought that in? That was in the top 10 in the early stages of this race. It looks like it's had one or two issues. 17th, and it's Henry Zumpring who brought that car in.
That is a great-looking car.
It's a beast,
the M4 is a great-looking car. It's got air vents and bits of bodywork sort of along the sides of the car.
I would say.
Yeah, fins and veins and ducting all the way down the car.
Just a massive muscle, really, making its way to the end of the pit lane. And for those that like their CCs, actually only a 3.2 litre in the front of that BMW M4. So as far as cubic capacity is concerned, we've got more powerful BMWs on offer, but that really does look the business from Munkhoff Racing. And they're running in GT4, as I say, 17th overall. Where are they in class? 8th. And it'll be Henry Zumpring to continue, I think. How long has Henry been at the wheel of that car? Well, we'll find that out just as soon as the car rejoins from the fueling area. We haven't actually detailed in full where the cars are being fueled, unlike a more regular Creventic race meeting. Sometimes there's a little quadrant set up, isn't there, with the fuel pumps within a square, and sometimes that's accessed via a pit garage, in one garage and out the other, whilst doing a little circle around the paddock. At Mugello, you do your fueling before the pit lane, and then there are other areas where you do it after the pit lane. Well, here, we're actually, because there's an endurance pit lane along with the F1 pits, the fueling's done in that second pit lane. And
it's ideal, really, Johnny.
It is. Apart from the fact that
it's,
I mean, Richard Neary makes the point that it's downhill. See, with some of the cars,
very steep downhill. I never even thought of that, you know. I was like, oh my goodness, of course. When Richard pointed that out earlier, that his car, the BMW, it's the Team Abbott car, isn't it? The Team Abbott with Roll Centre car. They can't actually fill the tank because the incline is so steep.
Imagine a storage box. We've got some of them in here at the back of our commentary box. Whilst this, by the way, the Lotus Evora, the Coroiser Racing Lotus Evora, has had a drama at the bus stop chicane and is parked up on the inside of that first bend, the right-hander, partly on the curb, partly on the... That's concrete, isn't it? Grasscrete, you might call it, rather than AstroTurf. So there should be a little bit of grip on there. But yeah, you imagine a box being filled with a fuel, then tip it to about 20 degrees. You're not going to get as much in as you would if it was on the level. So that's certainly a problem that maybe Creventic will investigate for a future Spa 12 hours. But yeah, the endurance pits has the fast lane, which you would use if you don't want to fuel the car, and then the slower lane on the apron, which you pull into. And when an F appears on the timing screen, we know the car is in that area, like the 259 BMW Z4. That's being fueled right now. And as I say that, it has a green ring now up against the 259, and that tells me that it's on an outlap, having just been fueled. Now, the Lotus Evora is steadily rolling backwards here, which is not great.
Now, it looks, Johnny, as though he's just pulled off to the right on the entry to the bus stop chicane, which is a right-left, very tight chicane.
And it's really uphill as well.
It's very uphill. I'm just wondering if he had a spin, though, into that position there. Now, we need to look at Binksy's bobble hat, because looking out of our window, that's very steady rain that's falling. And she's positioned herself at the Coroiser pit. But if Diana is down there, can we, if CJ could give us a look at a bobble hat, we'd see the rate of wetness.
Thank you so much. I am here in the rain.
By the way, Di, you've also got the race leader, because 221's just come in as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there it is. There's the Binksy's bobble hat. We can see the raindrop. It's not just on CJ's camera lens.
It's getting heavier now for sure down here. But you should have a guest on their way up to you to join you in the booth. He may have got lost because he did go about 5 minutes ago. So I'll leave you to have that surprise in a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, people are getting tyres out down here. It's just getting heavier, as you said. And I guess, you know, the drivers that are in now will stay now till the very end. But the weather conditions they're not being really that kind, I don't think, especially to my hat.
That 107 Lotus, I saw that you are at the Court Oyster pit, Diana. Is there anyone there that can maybe has had a radio message from the driver at the wheel of that car and what the problem might be?
Well,
it's number 70, by the way, not the 107.
They've come out, as you can see, the board is there, but the crew are not here. They seem to have appeared for some reason. I can't. Let me find out, and I will come back to you, because everything's set up, but there's just nobody here, so I'm not quite sure what they're doing. But I'll find out and I'll come back.
They may have run to the end of the pit lane, ready to receive the car, I was thinking.
The fuel, Johnny.
Well, it's possible. How long has it been out there for? An hour and 7 minutes.
No, I would have thought.
But that's a drive time. That's not telling me when it last pitted.
That's true.
Sadly. So we know driving the 70 car is Anthony Polito, the Canadian. There are two Canadians and Cor Oyster, clearly Dutch, as the trio there. So Polito now being spoken to by the marshals who've arrived on scene. Medical car, I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. We saw that Volvo in action yesterday as just one of the recovery vehicles, as well as being a medical car.
It is again, Johnny. They've hitched a tow strap to the rear of the medical car, and we're gonna tow the number 70 Lotus Evora in on the end of the medical car's tow rope. So the Court Oyster pit, where Diana Binks is currently stationed in readiness to delve into the issues that have befallen the 70 Lotus Evora, currently 8th in the SP3 GT4 class, currently 19th overall, but falling down the order progressively the more time it's taking to recover that car. That car should be with you any moment, Di, and we'll come down to you if you've got it. Have you got it? Yeah, see it?
I'm here. I'm sorry, I just had to jump out of the way of a car that was manoeuvring its way through Koyoza's pit board. I've just spoken to the crew. He has actually run out of fuel out there, so there's nothing they can do. They were all ready for him to come in, and then obviously, as you could see by the screenshots, he's still out there on track.
Thank you, Diana. And just in the background there, behind Diana, was Cor Oyster himself, who is a very hands-on. He might not just be... It's his team. He's driving the car, and he is running the team. So he'll be kicking himself as to how far they've run that car, unless, of course, they've got fuel pickup problems. Now, they may have perceived that they've given that car a full tank, but because of the inclination, as we were talking there, Johnny, that car might not have got a full tank of fuel.
Yeah, that's the other drama, isn't it? You know, you think you're putting enough fuel in it, and actually there's far less than you expected. Also, fuel pickup might be an issue if all the fuel has kind of worked its way to one end of the tank, and there's some kind of reserve tank, rather, in there. Martin Byford's found his way to the commentary box now. Diana Binks had said you'd left the pit lane about 10 minutes ago, but just needed to follow the aroma of Dragothnan tea that we're supping here. Joe, do you want to do this? Because you know...
I can do,
You know Martin far.
Oh, you really want to hear our stories, do you?
I really want to hear your stories.
He's brought his Belgian pâté as well.
Belgian pâté?
Hang on, wait till you get the headset on, Martin, then you can tell us, have you brought that Belgian pâté on a little bread biscuit to share?
I'd really love to hear a story about winning a Formula 4 race in a Formula Ford in about 2000.
Wasn't that far away, it was about 2011 or something. Of course, Martin Byford joins us in the booth here at Spa. Everyone's dying to hear the story of how we made history, mate, by winning. We won a Formula a monoposto race, was it, or a Formula 4 race outright in a Class C car.
In a Class C Formula Ford.
Yes.
On treaded tyres when everybody else had specific wets.
Yes. Can you remember why we didn't go onto dries when everyone else did?
Must have been the driver's decision.
It was our decision because we changed tyres so many times we just couldn't be bothered.
That's it. You've got them on. Go and drive it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Talking about wet tyres on drying tracks, that was I would have had to give you 3 points there, mate, if I'd pulled you over with that one on. The camera showed clearly how bald it was, devoid of tread completely. How tricky was that to drive towards the end of that stint?
Actually, not too bad. The fronts were okay. It was actually the rears that were
Was that a rear?
No, that was a front.
Oh, right, that was a front.
But the rears were starting to chunk up as well. So actually, down the straights and the return leg from Stavolo back towards the pit lane was actually really tricky because the tiniest input, the car wanted to rotate. Once you turned the car into a corner and loaded it onto the tyre, it was fine. But it was really, really nervous in the straight line and onto the brakes.
So that initial turn in, you're thinking the car's going to completely break away from you, but it didn't. It just needed to load up. That's quite something to get your head around, I would imagine.
It is when you don't know how much grip you've got at each corner every time you arrive there.
That was my next question, Martin. How changeable were the conditions from lap to lap, or was it indeed corner to corner?
Well, actually, for me, to be honest, it stopped raining fairly soon after the start of the race. So actually, it was kind of a very slow progression into a dry line. Obviously, the ambient temperature was quite low, so it wasn't the dry line didn't come very, very fast. So it was a slow progression. The changes were actually quite small, like lap by lap it was coming. You could see where the grip was. The hard thing is trying to judge how hard to push on the tyre. So you need that longevity to try and make your pit window without killing the tyre. You don't want to do an extra stop if you can possibly help it. In the meantime, we've got the guys on the radio saying the BMW was catching us. The Cox guys were taking time off us. So it was kind of trying to manage that gap and trying to manage the gap to them. For this first 3 hour stint, it's really about kind of keeping track position and keeping position in class. So I think we're still P3 right now, but we're close. We haven't gone a lap back yet.
Yeah, that's quite a battle that's developing in the Year 3 class. Just to give everybody an idea of where we're talking, you guys are currently in 19th overall, and you've just moved up to second in class, I believe, because of a little bit of movement. You've gone ahead of Luther in the German Wheels BMW, just there on that lap. And you're currently 19th overall, and the car ahead of you in class is 17th overall, and that's another Honda, this time the RKC TGM Honda with Ricky Coomber at the wheel. Car 99 is currently leading the Year 3 class. That stint though, Martin, those tyres, that was perfect. You came in, the front tyres were devoid of tread right on the very edge of your stint, which is perfect. All right, perfect. Yeah. The kind of the performance level of the car, as you say, was going away from you, but it's kind of small margins that you're losing, isn't it?
You gain a little bit through grip on the circuit, so the circuit gives you more grip, but the tyre goes away and gives you less grip. Actually, overall, we were going faster and faster. We dipped under the 3 minutes lap time, and we sort of doing 58, 258, 259s fairly consistently, even though the circuit was drying. The tyres were getting worse, so it was kind of actually lap time wise it was staying fairly static, and it was just a matter of kind of just trying to keep that tyre running into the pit window.
Did you guys stay on wets? Yes. when Alan took the car? Now that's come to play.
Yes.
Alan would have imagined would have had to really nurse his tyres when he first went out, but now we've got a completely wet track, and it's ideal conditions for the tyres that are on the car.
Yeah, it really was one of those, call it as you see it. Some of the other cars in our class, I think, are a little bit shorter on fuel than us, so they were probably looking at that Code 60 when it came was quite on fuel was quite good for them, bad for us because we don't want to Code 60 at that point. They all jumped in and a lot of them went to slicks at that point. I think I think the leading car is on slicks, and hopefully we'll be catching something from it.
Let's pop down to the pits, Diana Binks.
I'm with Cor Oyser, who you were talking about earlier. Cor, we saw the car obviously come to a standstill on the track. We assumed perhaps that you'd run out of fuel. Was that the issue? Because they brought it back in and it seemed to fire up and go again.
Yeah, that's the plan. We don't know why we ran out of fuel. We had at least 2 laps in the car. For some reason, it didn't pick it up. It has to do something with the fuel pump, which has to pick up the last 10 liters. So I think this is the problem, but we lost a lot of time. It's a pity.
It's frustrating, isn't it, when you see that happening? Because, again, there's nothing you can do, but I could hear you talking to the driver, so you're clearly talking him through what was going on.
Yeah, that's right. I tried to give him all tons of information, and use the override of the fuel pumps, but he didn't really get it because he switched off the master, so that took a while to get him back on the line. So, but hopefully we're running again, so it's good.
Is it the conditions here that are making that fuel economy a bit more difficult?
Well, normally you run out of fuel after 2 hours, but the weather is quite bad, so we have another half an hour or maybe 45 minutes in the tank. So we're really squeezing it, but we should not stop on the track. We should stop in the pit.
Absolutely, but for the moment, thanks, Cor.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, bad news for the Courtois Racing Lotus Evora. They're losing a chunk of time running out of fuel towards the end of the lap. Now, Martin, we're about 18 minutes away from the finish of this first 3 hours. Now, I kind of like this split race format. It adds an element of tactic, and I know you like your tactics. Endurance Racing's one on the pit wall, I think. What's the decision with you boys? Because basically, just to let our listeners and viewers in on this, when we do finish tonight, it's parc fermé conditions, and we restart the race with the car in the same condition as it's finished in 18 minutes' time. So the tactical decision there is, do you pit before the finish, start tomorrow with a full tank of fuel and fresh tyres, or do you run with what you've brought tomorrow morning and then pit, you know, in half an hour or 20 minutes or whatever you've got left in the tank? Or have you guys decided on a tactic relating to that?
We have, but...
Are you not going to let us know?
Yeah, well, can't let the cat out of the bag.
No, of course. Because it's crucial.
It is, yeah, and it can make a big difference tomorrow. The immediate effect won't be apparent today.
Right.
But once you get into that driver window tomorrow, and the 2-hour driver window tomorrow, depends how much fuel you've got at that point, and then it has a roll-on effect all the way through tomorrow's race, which is today's race as well. You have to treat it as one complete race. Yeah, in 16 minutes time, literally you stop the car, turn it off, and go again tomorrow.
And that's actually interesting what you say there, Martin, because you are treating it as a 12-hour race, just a break. You're just switching it off and switching it back on.
Yeah.
So actually, put that out of your mind. It's not because everyone else is stopping.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the wisest thing to do.
Yeah. If 3 hours happens to fall on your fuel window, if you can run an hour and a half on fuel, so in the 3 hours, happens to fall for your fuel window, you could make a call on it and have a big gain tomorrow.
Yes.
For us, that's not an issue because we can get to 2 hours on our fuel. So for us, that is not really. We're not going to play with that.
Have you seen any weather forecast for tomorrow?
It's Spa in October. It's going to rain.
No, that's why I asked. Yeah, and on saying that, I prefer consistent weather conditions like what we're seeing. I know we talk about changing track conditions, but I prefer a weather forecast that said full wet, not wet, dry, wet, dry. I hate that. A headache. You concur?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult to call it. Especially when you got, if it's a 20-minute sprint race, you make your choice, make a decision, and you run with it for the 20 minutes. Here, it can have such a big impact on the rest of your race, and so you have to kind of look at it. You try to view that bigger picture, and today, the 3 hours today, is really about making sure you're in good shape for tomorrow, making sure you hopefully get to the end with no damage on the car, and you're good to run just to hit that start button tomorrow morning and go get on with it.
Last time I saw you, I feel like I see you every day because we're on Facebook, but. Last time I saw you was on the podium at at Barcelona, where not only were you, not only did you lift the trophy for the race, but you lifted the trophy for the A3 Championship. Now, when you started back at Silverstone, first round of the TCE series, you guys came into this thinking we're going to win the championship, or were you just thinking race by race?
Race by race, really, because we weren't planning on doing every single race of the TCE Championship this year. Silverstone was fantastic for us. We had really good clean race, and this car has been fantastic for us. Last year it was good. The big difference for us is what the team guys have done over the winter. After Barcelona last year, where he finished second, we looked at the analysis after the race, looked at the breakdown, and we did it on 12 stops. The guys that beat us, the Altran Peugeot guys, fantastic team, they stopped 16 times but spent less time in the pit lane than us. So it's fairly obvious we lost it in the pit lane. We were in the pit lane too long. So the guys really looked at that over the winter, really looked at how to polish their part of this race. And it's a big part of it. And we kind of, our team manager kind of sat down with the guys and said, look, for us to gain 10 seconds on track is incredibly hard. If you can gain those 10 seconds in the pit lane, that's free time. So they really hunkered down and really worked on that over the winter. And it made a huge difference for us, and it really showed when we got to Silverstone this year. Fantastic pit stops every time, on the money, great tyre changes. We worked on the driver change as well, and our aim is to get 4 tyres and driver change done in 40 seconds. We want the car away in 40 seconds, and if we do that, we're good. Going to Barcelona this year, we did it on 11 stops.
Mm-hmm. how motivational, what is that to your team to feel that they are a vital part to the end result? It's not just about you three superstars at the wheel of the car.
No.
It's a team sport, endurance racing, and that proves it, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Silverstone was that was the proof of the pudding. They did their bit over the winter and tried to improve what they were up to, but I think for those guys, maybe it's kind of difficult to see how much of an impact that has until it actually physically happens.
Yeah.
And at Silverstone, it's exactly what happened. Yeah, we cut big chunks off of our pit stop time, in and out much faster, and came out with our first 24-hour race win at Silverstone this year. And suddenly, the penny dropped. It's like, we do our bit in the car, but that bit just gained us a huge amount of time. Whether the car is not stationary. You
could say Martin had won you the championship in the class championship. No doubt.
Yeah, because going even better practice. The guys did a few brick car rounds in the UK in between going to Barcelona. It was even more polished. It was even better. And even to the point where the first pit stop at Barcelona, the team that we were sharing the garage with, the car came in, pit stop, 2 tyres, driver change, gone. They actually applauded us.
Yeah.
They actually applauded us. I was like, actually, you know what? That's fantastic. That's impressive. When another team, we know them quite well as it happens, but when they actually go, wow, that was good, and they give you a round of applause when the car's gone. I think then that's when it really sinks in for those guys that they are a huge part of what we do.
That's why we love long distance racing. Martin, before you go, back down, because there's we're coming up towards the 10-minute to go mark. I'm sure you want to be down with your guys. Your time, your car is still second in class, 17th overall. I'm trying to fathom how far behind the other car is. It's still the RKC TGM. Again, I think they're on a different fuel pit strategy to you guys. 2017 almost over. We've got another 9 hours tomorrow. Looking towards 2018, we've got a calendar announcement tomorrow from Creventic. Synchro Motorsport, can we, I'd love to see you guys do the whole series, because I think you do really, really well. I know it comes down to budget, and I'm probably talking to the converter here. I know you'd like to be here for everyone. Of course. But is there something, are we already thinking towards next year and trying to put, I know you guys like to do the big ones like Barcelona and Silverstone, but what's the thoughts on perhaps seeing Synchro do the whole series and see where you come out?
Probably unlikely because of budgets.
Again,
unfortunately, we'd love to come and do it all. We have a new car in the pipeline, so the new shape Type R. We've got a fleet of them over the way here.
Yeah, they do look. They look like they're doing 100 mile an hour standing still, don't they?
So that car is in build right now. It's not far away from being complete. So we hope to have it here. To be honest, we hope this is going to be its first race, and unfortunately,
all right.
You've got to remember that Synchro Motorsport are all volunteers. These guys are not paid.
Yeah, we mentioned, Johnny and I described how your team is put together by employees at the Honda plant.
Yeah. So that means that it's workshop time is limited for them. So it's evenings and weekends. So first, a normal full-time, full-blown professional race team, a day's work takes these guys a week because of simply they can't get the hours in the workshop. Don't get me wrong, they put the hours in. They're there in the evenings. They're away from their families, even when we're not here on racetracks.
Yeah.
So they're putting massive effort in to get that car done. But as with the current car, when it comes out, we want it to run very, very well.
Martin, thank you for popping in and giving us a bit of a chat. Always great to talk to you. Wish you all the very best of luck for the rest of this race. We'll talk to you tomorrow, though. I'll see you down there because I'm going to get wet as well. Let's pop down to the pit lane now, though, and we've got Dinah Binks with Martin Short.
I am the 234 car. You probably saw it just, I don't know if you did see it, actually, just making its way up the pit lane. Martin, it looked like, my heart was in my mouth for you, really, because it looked like the car is retiring, but it's not, you tell me. Can you just explain what's happened? Because we've only got about 10 minutes left, I think, of this race.
Yeah, we've brought it in. Graham's been stuck in second gear for the past 2 or 3 laps. This gearbox has yet again proved to be the car's Achilles heel. I really think we need to change this gearbox for something else. William Hewland, are you listening? I think I had this conversation at the last one.
He'll be tweeting in a minute.
Yeah, he will. So we're doing a sort of strategic finish before the pit lane closes at with 10 minutes to go. So we brought the car in so we can work on it now till the end of the race. We're going to lose 3 or 4 laps now, and then we're going to take the
a very generous 10-lap penalty tonight, so we can change the gearbox and hopefully tomorrow morning return with a car that's back to reasonable fettle until the gearbox blows again.
It's frustrating, isn't it? And yet, I mean, the way that this series works is we get this break during the night. So not that that makes any difference to the actual racing hours that you're racing.
Well, it does, to be fair. I mean, this is the first time this has happened that I was aware of this 10-lap penalty. It would cost us a lot more than 10 laps to fix this. So it's actually a big advantage, and it means that we can I'm having to move to the camera. It's a big advantage and means that we get more racing hours tomorrow. We're only going to lose 12 minutes of racing today, fix the car, everyone gets to drive for a good bunch of time tomorrow, and so it's a very positive thing. So well done, Creventic. That's a nice little rule, that. I like that.
How long will it take the guys to do the job?
Probably a couple of hours, so you can imagine that would really hurt us during the race, so during full running race time, but at least it's going to eat into our eating and drinking time tonight, but we get more laps tomorrow, so it's all good.
Thanks, Martin. We'll see you bright and breezy tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Diana.
Thanks, Diana, and bad luck there for the Aberrall Centre BMW once again. We saw them having a bit of a torrid time last time out at the first round of the TCE series. Johnny, they had horrendous problems, engine changes and the like, but an interesting point that Martin Short made there about the rule, taking in the 10-lap penalty for working on the car during the Parc Fermé halt is much better than actually replacing a gearbox under race conditions. And he will not lose as much time. He'll lose what, about 30 minutes track time, 10 laps at the current rate, whereas 2 hours to replace a gearbox. So all right, it's not great, and but in the face of adversity, when it comes to finding a positive out of a negative, that is it. And I'm not sure they had a choice in the matter though, so we'll see the Aberrall Centre boys hard at work. Maybe pop down there and give them a bit of a G up, as they'll be not getting their well-earned eating and drinking time tonight. Very wet out there, and I'm sure the Binksy's bobble hat is very wet indeed. Diana, update on the weather. It doesn't look very nice at all. It's getting worse, in fact.
It's not, but I have come out into the pit lane to show you, just in case you thought I was hiding. No, it really is throwing it down again. It's quite wet now. So here I am, I'm in the pit lane. I'm going to keep across it right to the very end. A bit of rain doesn't harm me.
Of course not. You're a Scottish Borders lassie.
Absolutely.
This is the height of summer for you, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't need my sun cream this time, unfortunately. In Barcelona, of course, it was fantastic weather conditions, but we don't mind a bit of rain.
No. And the bobble hat's standing up very well indeed. Thanks, Diana. With 5 minutes to go, Diana, you may as well come back in and get dry, and great stuff down in the pits, finding out everything for us. And Johnny, we are hurtling towards the first halt of this segmented race, and with the leader still in the shape of the KTM crossbow of the 221 RTR Projects team, having completed 54 laps. From what I can gather, we've only got 3 cars on the lead lap. Am I right, or are we just waiting for those other cars to cycle through?
It might be close to that. One thing I do know is that Saudo Faisal and Ollie Kangas are having a ding-dong fight for second and third positions. They're separated by just a second, nose to tail, bearing in mind one's a GT4, one's a TCR, but I think the GT4 cannot utilise its power advantage. It's trying to lay down the power coming out of the slower corners at La Source and at Lake Com, down at Campus Corner as well, but the TCR, ever more nimble machine, the LMS Racing, powered by Baz Curtin car, driven by Ollie Kangas. Baz Luhrmann, I didn't say Baz Luhrmann, but I said something close to it. An
amalgamation of.
Baz Curtin, I think is the correct pronunciation. I'm basing that entirely on the Everton manager.
No, you're right.
Who is Ronald Koeman.
A few rounds ago, I was pronouncing Baz's name as Cowton.
No, I think it's Cooten.
He took issue with me and said it's Cooten.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna check with Peter Fry, who is our man here at Creventic, making sure we've got all our relevant documents ahead of a big race like this, the season finale for the TCE series. Remember, the 24H series, the International Endurance Series, going on to a non-championship round at Cota, Texas in November. And we'll all be there for the Radio Show Limited Network, broadcasting this weekend on RS1, RS2 and RS3, with a variety of race commentaries from around the racing world. 3 minutes to go. We started today with 3 hours and 5 minutes, and that's not the way that the guys running the QSR Racing School BMW will have wanted to end their race. Now, this is well out of a scheduled stop. They're not bringing the car in to fuel it in readiness for tomorrow's 9 hours. This is late drama for the QSR squad. This is not the team championship leading team. Remember, the other car, number 154, leads the team's championship by a single point. But the 161 car has had various problems, I think, through the course of this 3 hours, and it's now in the garage having to be serviced. They would like to get it back out onto the track when the flag falls, I'm sure. Otherwise, when your car's in the garage before the first part of the race comes to a close, does it have to stay in the garage then?
Yes, it does, and you take
and
a
are
penalty.
you going to incur a penalty? So they'd want to
Yes,
try
you
and
do.
avoid that, don't they? Ike Angermeyer is now back on to lap 56 and is leading by something like 2.5 minutes over this supreme fight between Saud Al Faisal and Ollie Kangas in their Mercedes and Seats respectively. Across the line again they go, nothing between them, second and third, and Kangas trying to get, well, possibly second place back again. The key thing though for Ollie Kangas is that he leads TCR nearing the end of this 3 hour and 5 minute chunk of the Spa 12 hours. You can't see a thing out of the 216 car through Eau Rouge and then Radion. Caught behind the bright yellow BMW was the driver of 216.
That's the German wheels car, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
216 is Benny Simonson in the Modena Motorsports Seat.
So Benny was following Michael Luther that time through Eau Rouge with the German wheels BMW M3, the bright yellow car, just in front.
Last lap board being readied with 52 seconds to go. It is now being shown to our competitors. So they are on their final lap of this, the first segment of the 12 hours of Spa. And we'll be bringing the race to a halt, effectively bunching everyone together. That's why it's crucial to remain on the lead lap, or indeed the same lap as your class leader, because you may be 2 minutes behind on the road, but when we come to restart tomorrow, you will be right on the tail of your class or overall leader. So that's why it's crucial. And Johnny, by my estimation, we do only have 3 cars on the overall lead lap, and that being the number 221 RTR Projects KTM Crossbow in the lead and in first place, and the Saud Al Faisal Mercedes in second place, car number 2. Also on the lead lap is the LMS Racing powered by Baskuten Seat of Kangas at the wheel of the 119, and that car is indeed leading the TCR class.
Yeah, we've got, as you say, 3 cars. Well, it may be 4, but only just on the lead lap. But crucially, it's only 2 GT4s on the lead lap within that class, because I think Chris Tiger's too far back in car 211. He's in 6th place overall, and surely must be a lap behind Ike Angermeyer and Saud Al Faisal. So we're going to have a fight from tomorrow's restart at 9:10 between the 2 GT4 cars, the RTR KTM and the Mercedes AMG from Black Falcon. Going to be closer though as far as TCR is concerned, because still staying in touch, car 155, the Baskuten Racing, Christian Jepsen and Jan Sorensen driven Seat, they are within touching distance of the Finnish entry, LMS Racing. And Ivo and Rick Breukers should still be on the lead lap within TCR. The clock though is now at 0, and somewhere in the middle sector of this 3-sector 7-kilometre circuit is Ike Angermeyer. In the gloom, we will be able to pick him out fairly shortly. The final sector of this lap relatively short, just 47 seconds or so. But Ike Angermeyer will be taking this relatively gingerly, I think, knowing he's got a 2-minute lead over his nearest and dearest in GT4, Saud Al Faisal. And Saud, surely far more focused on where Ollie Kangas is, although the suggestion at the start of this lap is that Kangas has just backed off the pace very slightly. Briefly on board we go with the 218 car, which ended up in the gravel down at campus not too long ago, had to be recovered. And that 218 car, which also has Benny Simonson's name against it, isn't being driven by, well, that certainly didn't look like Benny. No, it's Michael Soayadia, and another nationality represented in this varied field, because Soayadia is from Indonesia. We have a guy from Macedonia as well. So yeah, really brushing up on my various nation flags this weekend. The 221 car crosses the line then, the RTR Projects KTM. 57 laps in the book after 3 hours and 5 minutes, and it is Angermeyer's RTR KTM that wins the first portion of the race, with Ivo Breukers finishing a lap down on the leading GT4 car. But I think for tomorrow's restart, Ivo will be close enough to Ollie Kangas to still be on the lead lap within TCR. And Kangas, we're still waiting for him to cross the line. Saud Al Faisal likewise. They will probably emerge out of the bus stop chicane together as the CWS Colin White Ginetta G55 is being told to take a very different line into La Source, because the cars are actually going to be lined up on that little pocket of runoff area out of La Source to drivers left. So there is a large expanse there of asphalt which will house 48 cars, I'm guessing overnight in fact, and it is there that they must not be touched until the restart tomorrow. Still, we're waiting for Saud Al Faisal to come back across the line and complete his 57th lap, and that will be a good effort from both he and Adam Christodoulou, who've been on driving duty today. We'll see Alex and Miguel Toril tomorrow, the two Spanish drivers. And a reminder that the pit lane is closed, so even if you wanted to come in now, I suppose you could, but you would immediately incur a penalty. Over the line goes a great clump of more TCR cars, although Saud Al Faisal and Ollie Kangas are still not amongst them. We're going to have to wait about another half-minute, I think, before they come towards the end of their race. There goes Saud Al Faisal, and what's the gap between him and Ollie Kangas? It's opened up to something resembling probably 10 seconds now. Not quite, 9 seconds between Al Faisal and Kangas. So the RTR KTM wins the first part of the race, although there are no points awarded at this stage, remember. But the winning margin at the end of 57 laps is just under 2 minutes.
I think the significant thing I'm going to take from this, though, Johnny, is that Kangas in the LMS Racing Seat leading TCR, because of how that is finished, is now going to start tomorrow's race a lap ahead of the second car in TCR.
Okay.
It's gained because it was behind Breukers.
Yes.
And the leader had overtaken Breukers. Breukers stays at the line, and they've already gone through. They come up behind him and put him a lap down.
Yeah, well, this is a conversation probably to be had between Rob at timeservice.nl and us in the bar later, as we were up till all hours trying it. Well, I was up till all hours having it explained to me, somewhere like Austria Red Bull Ring, I think it was, or maybe at Imola. Anyway, depending on how the regulations are read for this weekend, and it has altered at various points through the year, you're right that between Evo and Kangas crossing the line was the overall leader, and that may complicate matters. However, if it's done purely on a class basis, I think Breukers was close enough to Kangas to be still counted on the TCR lead lap. But we will wait and see how the grid is issued later on.
That is why Rob does what he does and we do what we do.
Indeed. And all we can do is wait for that document to be issued. It will appear, by the way, on the timeservice.nl website, so you can review that tonight and overnight if you wish to. And that will give detail as to how the cars will be gridded up tomorrow. Remember, they will grid up again on that stretch of tarmac between La Source and Eau Rouge, and the green flag lap will commence at 9:10 local time tomorrow morning. So that's the time the clock will start to tick again, and we'll get through as much racing as we can until we have to stop by the restriction, the circuit restriction here at Spa. We have to be done and engines off at 6 p.m. So it's going to be 11 hours and something like 55 minutes, I think. But we'll see how we do. But that's the great thing about Creventic. You know, they're given these rules and regulations about a particular track that we visit, and they go, right, well, we'll find a way of racing for 12 hours or 24 hours within those restrictions. Didn't see a finish there for Klaus Klosterman, interestingly. The 239 car didn't come across the line.
Yeah, and we've got a yellow flag at turn 13, so I wonder if Klosterman has lost it at turn 13, Johnny.
So worry, isn't it? Because the 239 car has had its dramas through the course of this race, including pulling off on the main straight down towards La Source not too long ago when Michael Klosterman was at the wheel. Klaus's name now has a checkered flag alongside it. So maybe the car has come across the line in the pits or on the main track, I'm not sure. But it's about to be, this might be it, about to be waved into position. There it is. 239 did make it to the finish, but it was a much, much slower lap for Klaus Klosterman. So we have the full complement. You know, that lap took him 6 minutes and 46 seconds. Wowzers.
Call me a detective. He did probably cause that yellow flag. In the pits, just to run down who is in the pits, the number 234, the Team Aberystwyth Roll Centre BMW, the 161 QSR Racing School BMW is in the pits. And we've got at the back of the field car 235, the Duo Racing BMW, the 163 Motorsport International Volkswagen. We heard, I think, Diana explaining that that car will get an engine change. And sorry, no, it was the Kia Ceed that's getting the engine change, which is car 164, which is currently 48th overall, but finishes this part of the race. It's the Bashstruck Motorsport Kia Ceed that'll be getting the engine change.
Let me give you a rundown of the various categories at the end of 3 and a bit hours then. GT4 finished 1st, 2nd and 6th overall as far as the top 3 in that class are concerned, with the RTR KTM winning, as we know, from the Saud Al Faisal driven Mercedes from Black Falcon. And then 3rd in SP3 stroke GT4 was the Chris Tiger 211 car. That's another Mercedes AMG, the Uwe Altzen example. And that car finishing 3rd of the GT4s, but 6th overall. TCR top 3, Kangas we've mentioned for LMS Racing, the 119 car from the 303, Rick and Ivo Broikers Red Camel Seat, and 3rd was number 155, and the 155 car being the Baz Kooten Racing, powered by Kawasaki Seat LCR TCR. Other classes further down the order, number 99 winning for the moment, or leading, I should say, for this overnight stop, leading Class A3. That's the RKC TGM entered Honda, the FD2 Honda. 2nd position in Class A3 is the 176, the Synchro Motorsport car. And we were hearing, of course, in detail from Martin Byford about how they were doing. They didn't quite manage to catch the 99. And 132 finished 3rd in Class A3. That's the German Wheels BMW, the all yellow example. Cup 1, JJ Motorsport at the top of the times in the all BMW M235i class. So 192 currently leading Cup 1 for the overnight spell from 152, and it was James Colburn who finished that portion of the race for Sorg Rensport in 2nd position. 3rd in Cup 1 was the 162 Gamsys Motorsport entered car. A2 won by the 52 Team Sally Racing Renault Clio Cup car. 2nd in A2 was the Heli Racing BMW 120D. So that changed quite late on. I remember the Clio was leading, sorry, the BMW was leading that class with about half an hour to spare. And 3rd in A2, we need to go to page 2 for that. And it was the 222 HTM Racing entered car for Class A2. I think that might be all our classes. Yes, it is. 5 in total. And that's how we sit then for the overnight stop. It's not the usual way of going endurance racing, but as you've already mentioned in our broadcast, Joe, we kind of like it.
No, I do like this.
We get some dinner, we get a sleep, and we come back for what is set to be a real intense affair tomorrow with just under 9 hours for all of these cars to do. And if your car is carrying some kind of issue, you're sure to find it, aren't you, in that 9 hours?
Yeah, because we're going to have to start the way we finished, Johnny. And I do like this split format. It's very civilised.
Mm-hmm. But the Mercedes obviously having these various problems through the course of the weekend, and the HTP Motorsport car needing to be fixed on the fly. Thank you for joining our coverage of the Spa 12 hours. We've done a mere 3 hours and 5 minutes, so still a good 9 hours to do tomorrow. And we're back live from 8:30 Central European Time. From Diana Binkstand in the pit lane, from Joe Bradley and from Johnny Palmer. Good night.